The council meeting of September 26, 2011 will now come to order. We hope. Please turn off all cell phones and pagers for the duration of the meeting. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Natal, Mayor Pro Tem Snyder,
Here.
Councilman Moreno,
Here.
Councilman Benson. Here. Your light, sir. Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Carson.
Present.
Councilwoman Teeter.
Here.
Councilman Diaz.
Here.
Councilman McEldowney. Here. Councilman Bullock. Here. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Will the audience please rise and join us for a moment of silence and then follow us by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, city staff will pass around a microphone, and we invite everyone to introduce themselves, please.
Bob Zeiler. Danny Thomas.
Betty Thomas. Ellen Haug.
Genesis Galdine.
Marcus Silliman.
Robert Taves.
Guillermo Serna. Derek Quintana.
Joy Bishop.
Gene Leffel, Board of Adjustment.
Larry Wood, Police Department.
Ian Rancha.
John Howard, Information Technology.
Jim Hayes, Community Development.
Michelle Halstead, Communications.
Ms. Ryan Cordero, Government Relations.
Brittany Morris-Saunders, Director of Economic Development. Michelle Rogers, City Manager's Office.
Josiah Ellsworth.
Ms. Bauer, do we have any citizen communication this evening?
We do.
Okay. A public comment roster was made available at the table at the entrance to council chambers for those who wish to address the council. Looks like we have quite a few. So we'll start with Josiah Ellsworth. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Josiah Ellsworth. Is that good?
And your address, please.
7200 Quebec Parkway,
Thank you.
Commerce City.
Go ahead.
Like I said, my name is Josiah, and I'm on staff at Adams City High School. This year we have the opportunity to do a food drive for Adams 14's Hope Center. The Hope Center is unique to Adams 14 compared to other districts because it supplies food and school uniforms, other resources for the families in need. And right now the shelves are running bare. Marianne gets little to no donations. And so we decided to put in motion this food drive for October 7th, which is next Friday. And I come before you because I wanted to let you guys in, and we're looking for donations. So my initial thought was to come to city staff and try to get donations from you guys. We're going to do through the school, each elementary and middle school. They have a location, a drop-off point, so the staff members come to the school, drop it off on October 7th, and October 7th we're going to pick it up, we're going to deliver it to the Hope Center, and our vision and our goal is to stock the shelves at least 12 months out, because right now she's having to turn families away that are really in need.
It's not good.
Not good at all. So that's our goal, that's our vision, and the Commerce City Police Department and the city staff, I'd like to open it up to you guys so we can get as many donations as possible so we don't have to turn these families away. And so I have flyers and a supply list, so I'd like to present these. Who do I present them to?
Laura, did you want to pass those around for us? That'd be great. Thank you so much. And that tells where and when and everything you'll be accepting donations?
Absolutely. The next question was, I have been in talks with the Commerce City Police Department, and we're trying to solidify a place here at the Civic Center that city staff and police department can just have a central location, and we'll come pick it up on October 7th. We're going to have video and photos so you know where your donations are going, and that'll be all documented. And, that's just our vision. So if there was a place, say the central lobby or somewhere secure where the food can go, that's what we're looking for.
Okay, City Manager Flannery, do you think that we could work with Josiah and to get that done?
Yes, we'd like to see the information and make sure that we let everybody know.
Okay, and he's looking for an area here that we might be able to do a drop-off point, is that correct?
We can do that.
That'd be great. Okay, so if you'll get with City Manager Flannery, we would be happy to help, and I'm sorry to hear that the Hope Pantry is going low on food like that. We're definitely going to want to do everything that we can for that.
Absolutely. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you so much. Genesis Galdine, am I close? Was I close? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Genesis Galtine. Do I have to give my address so you know I'm a student? I'm Adams City High?
No? Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so my name is Genesis Galtine. On behalf of the Adams City High School, we would like to invite the City Council to our homecoming events, especially the parade that's coming up this Saturday. It'll be hosted from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So I don't know if you guys would love to go. We'd love to have you guys there as leaders of our city. Also, there's a list I'm going to give you guys. I don't know who I should give this to. Maybe
you can give that to Ms. Bauer right next to you. Thank you.
There's a list of the events we will have at the Adams City High School. So if you guys would love to go, that would be amazing for us. That would, show a lot of support from you guys, and we just hope to see you guys there. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, we'll just pass that around. Thank you. Steve Douglas. Good evening, Mr. Douglas.
Good evening, Council. Steve Douglas, 10970 Unity Parkway. And I've just come up here I didn't hear anything as far as the email on the question I asked last week on the Metro District as far as King Soopers and what Metro District that sits in.
City Manager Flannery.
I believe we answered last week, but I don't think the specific number. I think that's a Shea or a Metro District question.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Douglas?
I guess so. I guess I'll contact them then.
Mr. Flannery, were you wishing for him? Was there any more information we might provide to Mr. Douglas?
It's part of the Metro District, as I mentioned last week. I don't know the numbers of the districts up there.
Okay.
I think that's a specific issue for the HOA or for the Metro District.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Joy Bishop. Good evening, Joy.
Good evening. I'm Joy Bishop. I live at 6491 Glencoe Street. Good evening, council and staff. I was just wondering what it would take to get a bulb in this light right out here by the steps. Those steps are really dark when we leave the council meeting, and that light has been burned out for months now.
Okay, City Manager Flannery, I'm sure you could have someone look into that, right?
Sure, but there's a form that we can ask maintenance to get on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Robert Taves. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing this evening? Hope everybody's doing quite well. I was brought to my attention.
I'm sorry, Mr. Taves. Name and address, please. Thank
Robert
you.
Taves, 7120 66th Place in Commerce City.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. It was brought to my attention that there's several seniors and disabled people that like to come to City Council, and there's no way for them to get here. Is there any future plans for the city to go ahead and be able to bring a bus service up through here or something to help them out to be able to come to City Council meetings?
City Manager Flannery.
We have been talking about this for quite some time. I think we have been working with RTD on several things. I can bring that back
That'd be
in the
great.
form of a memo from
Okay.
Carolyn.
Okay,
Ms. Keith?
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Jean Leffel. Jean Leffel. Let me pronounce that properly. Thank you.
Everybody has their own way. Jean Leffel, 6530 Brighton Boulevard, Garden Terrace subdivision of Commerce City, established in 1922. I wanted to thank everybody that came to the chemical roundup over the weekend. We collected quite a bit of stuff that might otherwise have been disposed of improperly, and consequently I missed the Historical Society picnic. First one I ever missed, a charter member. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is I wanted to invite everybody over to the Haunted House. Our official public grand opening will be this Friday. That's at the Mile High Event Center, 64th and Highway 2. And this will be one of the few times you'll actually be able to see me working. If you missed your chance on Saturday, you'll have a chance every evening this month except for Monday evenings when I'll be right here like I have been for the last 7 years. We are allowed to let a few friends and family in at no charge. So that can happen tonight, seems unlikely. That could happen Wednesday night when I'll actually have to be there then also. So if anybody wants to come and see me and pretend you're my friends or family, although my family works there, I'll be the one letting you in.
Okay.
So please, everybody, if you haven't been to that haunted house, #1 rated haunted house in the state of Colorado, it's here in Commerce City, and I'm checking the people coming in, so come on down and see me, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes everyone that's on the list. There are 2 sets of minutes before council this evening for approval. The first set of minutes are the minutes for the meeting of August 1st, 2011. Before voting on the minutes of August 1st, I need a motion to allow Councilwoman Carson to abstain from voting because of her excused absence. Councilwoman Teeter?
So moved.
Councilman Moreno?
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to allow Councilwoman Carson to abstain from voting because of her excused absence. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Councilman McEldowney?
Move to approve the regular meeting minutes of August 1st.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilwoman Teeter?
Second the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of August 1st, 2011. Any discussion? I'll take a voice vote at this time. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. The next set of minutes are the meeting minutes for the meeting of August 8th, 2011. Before voting on the minutes of August 8th, I need a motion to allow Councilman McEldowney and Councilwoman Teeter to abstain from voting because of their excused absences. Councilman Moreno.
Move to allow Councilwoman Teeter and Councilman McEldowney to abstain from voting on the minutes.
Thank you. Councilman Diaz.
Second the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to allow Councilman McEldowney and Teeter to abstain from voting on the minutes of August 8th. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. I will now entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 8th, 2011. Councilman Moreno.
Move to approve the meeting minutes of August 8th, 2011.
Thank you. Councilman Diaz.
Second the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of August 8th, 2011. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll have a presentation by the parents and community for 27J students on the next steps for their mill levy override campaign. I will now ask City Manager Flannery to please invite staff to introduce the representatives from 27J for their presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. I'd like to request Ms. Rhyme Cordero, Intergovernmental Relations Manager, to come to the podium and introduce the guests.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Cordero.
Good evening, Madam Mayor Pro Tem Tracy Snyder and members of council. I would like to introduce the president of the 27J School Board, Joanne Canese, and other parents that are members of the Parents and Community for 27J Coalition.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Really, on behalf of the students in School District 27J. We really appreciate that you've allowed us some time this evening. My name is Joan Kniss. Would you like my address?
Yes, please, thank you.
361 Terra Vista in Brighton, 80601.
Thank you.
Brian Carfield, 19920 East 108th Place, Commerce City, Colorado, 80022.
Thank you.
Carmen Olson, 16725 East 105th Avenue, Commerce City, Colorado, 80022.
Thank you.
So Brian and Carmen are going to speak quickly about why we're here, and then I'll kind of sum up at the end.
Okay.
I'd like to thank everybody for their time, to give us this opportunity to speak for a second. I was told everybody received this paper in front of them beforehand. And this right here is just a quick overview of a mill levy override funding per pupil basis. For anybody that's not exactly sure what that is, just a brief overview of that would be that's any extra monies that the school district registered voters can go ahead and vote on and approve for this school district to get funds above and beyond what the state government and our homeowners tax brings in. This is a tax that would be an additional tax on homeowners. But as it is right now, our mill levy is pretty low. Anybody that could kind of look on there and see we're at the bottom, where the blue down at the bottom, where it's $53, which means that each student per school year the school district receives an extra $53 to purchase any teaching materials that we would maybe need for that school year per student. And this is a fixed number. So as you guys know, kind of up in the northern area of the city where our school district is located, we've had a lot of growth. So the last time that a mill levy was passed was back in 2000, and that was for $750,000. But at that time, our attendance was half of what it is. As our attendance continues to grow, that pot doesn't continue to grow. We just take that same budget that we have and divvy it out among all the extra students we have there. And that is the reason that we have gotten down to so low of $53. If you see some of the other districts around us with Adams 12, which is also here, well, that's just to the north of us, and Adams 14th, which is here in Commerce City, they get $697. And just to kind of give you guys an idea of what $697 would do, a school book is about $250 now per student. So they can go ahead and buy maybe 2.5 school books for their students. We can buy about a sixth of a textbook per student. So therefore, every year that comes on, we have history books that were purchased back 10 years ago that we obviously need to go ahead and replace because a lot of stuff has happened in the world in this time. We do not have the money to do that. So one thing that we're going to our residents and asking that we have not been successful in the past, and we are asking you guys to help support us in this as we go out and ask them, is to please give us a few more dollars that we can give to our students to help encourage and buy the school material that we need for them. And a few things on the back are just a few quick facts. I won't take up a lot of your time going through them, but just to kind of know, as everybody knows, that the state funds have been cut the past couple years for school districts, and they're expected to happen again also. So as we're losing money, we're not able to make that money up. So we're just kind of asking our voters to supplement some of that money by passing this resolution for us that would be on the ballot. It states on there that we're the lowest, as everybody has seen on there. The last time we passed it was in 2000. And one thing that we want everybody to know is that in the past, with this mill levy override, that since it is a fixed number, this would raise the mills on people's homeowners' taxes. But as we continue to grow in our school district and more people come in, this is just one solid pot. So as there is more residents, more commercial that comes into our district, that's more people that's going to put into the pot. So as we continue to grow, it will be less money that's asked of. the residents and everybody in our district that's up there right now. So the last time it was passed in 2000, whatever the mills raised for that time was, it has reduced dramatically because of all the extra people that has moved in since 2000. And Carmen to speak to let you guys know exactly what we're looking for funds to help out the district with.
Thank you.
Brian talked about some of the state budgets that we have taken a hit on, and in the last 3 years, we've taken about $13 million in budget cuts. As a result of that, we in 27J have had to cut 81 students. A solution for passing the mill levy, obviously, or I'm sorry, 81 teachers, not students. A solution would be that we would be able to restore some of those classroom teachers and reduce the sizes of our classrooms. One of the other problems that we've had is wage and benefit freezes for district staff. We'd be able to provide the competitive wages and benefit packages for them again. The budget cuts in the past have also resulted in having to charge parents the significant fees for sports, extracurricular activities, and school buses. I personally have a school bus rider, and it costs me $20 a month, and he only rides at home after school. He doesn't have to ride it in the morning. So these are some of the cuts that we would be looking to eliminate these fees if we were able to pass this mill levy. And as also reducing the class sizes and the transportation fees is all part of that as well.
Okay. I think when people look at the chart, it's quite obvious why we need the money. What we're looking at for a $200,000 home would be $100 more a year. So we like to say it's the cost of a chicken nugget meal. That would benefit our students to the tune of $327 additional dollars per student. So that will bring us up from the 53. Sadly, we'll still be the lowest funded district, but $300 more will be a huge help. We've done a lot of activities. You know, Dr. Blunk, he's very fiscally conservative. We've cut all we can cut. We've raised fees, but we can't keep putting it on our parents as far as fees go. So what we are asking for this evening is for you to consider supporting us via resolution. So I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. Councilman McEldowney?
Just want to quickly thank you guys for coming and speaking to us tonight, and thank you for your efforts that I'm aware of over the weekend. I know we had a phenomenal turnout across the district in both Commerce City, or I shouldn't say both, in Commerce City, Brighton, Thornton, and the county, with folks out walking the areas around schools to help get the word out. And that's exactly the kind of effort that we need to continue. You know, it's interesting when you talk to folks about this difference when they're not aware of it today, and they see, as you so aptly pointed out on the chart, the difference between what our students are receiving and what the other districts receive. And it's easy enough for folks to sort of jump to one of the talking points that we all too often hear about education and the cost of education, and, well, we don't want to give schools any more money because they waste it. I think this is the one school district that we can say without hesitation has done everything possible with the nickels and dimes and pennies that they have. It's not a matter of waste. It's a matter of investing, effectively investing in a community resource, a community asset, and the dividend of the potential future that our children collectively represent. To not make that investment is just shameful, and I would, at the appropriate point, be willing to make that motion regarding the resolution. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Carson.
I also wanted to thank all of you for coming tonight, Joan. Thank you for your presentation, and I love the T-shirt.
Me too.
I just want to enhance a little bit on what you all had spoke of. 27J does an awful good job at educating our kids with very little, and it's because of a committed staff, and a staff who will go way above and beyond what anybody out there is fully understanding. When you said they reduced the hours for 108 positions, I don't know if the public really understands what that means. That means we're asking people to come to work, and we're only going to pay you 15 hours a week. We're only going to pay you 18 hours a week. You're going to lose all your benefits. These are people who have been there for our children, and all of a sudden we've taken their means of a living away. This is us asking a custodian, we're going to cut all your custodians. You figure out how to keep your building at what we call a clean standard. How do we transport your children? Well, we start charging. Phone calls start, parents don't like this being charged. As just somebody who lives in the United States, it's time we started investing into the education of these children. It's how you all do it on this amount of money, I have no clue, other than I know a large majority of the employees there, and I have a full understanding it's because of their commitment. Your house value is tied into your school district, so you all better thank that school district for doing such a good job, but it will not be able to continue. And you can't continue asking teachers and bus drivers and secretaries and paras to continue coming to work when we just keep taking away and asking more for you. This just can't happen. I was there the day these reductions were made. People were devastated. Employees who have invested their life career into this school district and into these children. And I don't care what anybody says, we're not talking about people who are out here making tons of money. We're talking about people who are just making $20,000 or whatever. And we just cut that in half because there was no choice. So the children of this school district deserve this. And thank you all for all the hard work that you do, the door knocking that you're doing, the education of our citizens that you're doing, and everybody please step up to the plate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilman Benson.
Yes, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for all your efforts. I've talked to a lot of people over the last couple of months, and I've always encouraged them to vote for 3D. Do you have any yard signs? Do you have any with you?
500 went out this weekend at our walk and knock. And the reality of the situation is we don't have a lot of money even via donations. We were talking before we came in, we saved, Dr. Blunk, we saved as many yard signs from last year that we could, 200 probably we have saved. Then they changed our ballot issue from 3A to 3D. And so now we're going to look at, stickers really, so we can use those signs. But as of right now, we have no more, which is a good thing in that 500 people in the district took signs. So our effort is we're looking at more business donations so that we can order more yard signs. We will have money invested in direct mailing. So right now, we're raising for those direct mailings. But honestly, I was surprised pleasantly that 500 were placed over one Saturday. So that was great. But I've got your name, and hopefully we'll be able to fundraise to buy more yard signs, because that's bottom line. I think some people think, well, can't the school district give you some money? No, all of it has to be via donations. So we're working hard to do that. But so we're really counting our pennies. We really are. But I really appreciate your support. Just something that goes along with Councilwoman Carson's statements about our staff. I think a lot of times people say, well, you're not putting, whoever you is, you're not putting money into the classroom. You're spending it on administrators. In the metro area, the average money spent on administration is 5% of the budget. Our district, we spend 2% on administration. The rest goes into direct classroom instruction or supplies. In one way or another, our support staff. So we watch our pennies.
Thank you. Are you finished, Councilman Benson? Jim?
Well, if Mr. McEldanny is going to make the motion to adopt the resolution.
Well, we're not quite there yet, sir. We still have
I
several
would
people.
like to second it, just for future reference.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Diaz?
Yes, and I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all the hard work that you guys do. I was one of those who was fortunate to come home this past Saturday and realize that there was a yard sign on my yard supporting 3D, thanks to Councilman McEldowney dropping it off for me. And one of the things that I do appreciate about 27J is that you guys are pretty wise in your spending and how you guys spread your resources. My wife does teach in a different school district, and in her school district, they make $881 per kid compared to our $53 per kid. There's a kindergarten class in her school that has 35 students. So I can only imagine how our kindergarten class sizes are going to be years down the road if the mill levy doesn't pass. And I'm the one who has a kindergarten who's starting next year. So definitely very cautious, and I'm definitely very interested in that. And so one of the things that I also realized is that if every parent in 27J votes for this, it's going to pass by its own standards, right? How many parents are there in the school district? So all we really need to do is basically just have the parents vote yes on it. Right?
That's our hope.
It sounds simple enough. So it hasn't passed in the years past, so what are you guys doing differently? I mean, I know that there's yard signs up. What other things are you guys doing differently to help push this issue?
Well, I think one of the things, we started early. We started last spring, and we started meeting with city council people who came. So we've met with people here. City managers, economic development, so we started early on. Honestly, last year at this time, we probably had 10 people actively working on the campaign. I would say this year, we have 500 people, because I'm in charge of sending all the emails out, and we have so much more support. We're making so many more presentations. I almost could cry because these are the kinds of parents that we have going door to door. We wrote 4,000 handwritten postcards within this past week. We hadn't done that before, that little personal touch. We're just trying to more direct face-to-face contact.
Great.
So we're working hard, and I know many of you sitting up there have worked on our behalf, and we just cannot thank you enough because you as elected officials, your voices count a lot. So.
And just so I know, as I'm talking to people about it, I know you mentioned that $200,000 home, it's going to be about $100 a year, which does amount to about $300 per student. How many meals is that in terms of what is going to be listed on the ballot?
6.
Okay.
A little bit more, a little bit over 6, but.
And then the other thing I'll add is with you being the president of the school board, I really do have to commend how wise you guys are with your spendings. I work with 7 school districts in my day job, and I talk to a lot of district administrators and things of that sort, and I compare notes with my wife as well. And I tell you what, a lot of the school districts, in terms of their funding, yes, everybody's going down, but even in the ways that they are spending their money, in my opinion, it's also going downhill. In the meantime, 27J is being very frugal. They're still getting the results, and I feel like they're doing things really for the best interest of the students. So I really appreciate all the work that you guys do. So Brian, Carmen, and Joan, thank you for presenting tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Teeter.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for your presentation. I just feel so badly for the current, these pathetic dollar figures. It's just unbelievable. You are using this as a marketing tool, aren't you, when you're going door to door?
Yes, but what's sad about it, we used this same graph last year and the year before. And so this doesn't resonate with everyone, so that's why we're having to do a lot of other different tactics. But it's hard. Some people just cannot get over paying more taxes. Bottom line, that's where they are. So.
And that's very sad. I also commend the hard work of staff, all of you, the school district staff, and I think if you got all the grandparents like myself, along with the parents, we'll make this a victory. Thank you for all your hard work and effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McEldowney.
One last comment, and then I'd like to make the motion. The dollars that would be secured through this mill levy override, just to be clear, also impact the charter schools that fall within the boundaries of 27J or that operate with charter under the 27J umbrella. And so for the folks in Commerce City proper, that includes schools like Landmark Academy, et cetera, up in Brighton Heritage Academy, et cetera. I mean, these are charters that receive those same dollars. They receive the pass-through dollars that the state allocates to 27J, and those dollars go into their school, as do these override dollars. And so I think it's just incredibly important to remind parents in both the 27J schools proper and the charter schools that this impacts your children. And then to the folks that don't have kids and say this doesn't impact me, you're the same people that call me and call everyone on this dais about economic development in your community. And I will remind you that economic development, bringing in Class A offices, bringing in top-tier employers is absolutely directly tied to this. For folks that have watched the goings-on in our city for some time, you'll recall that we did an economic development strategic plan just a couple years ago, and one of the top items cited in that study was education. And so we need employment to bring those restaurants that you so dearly want. We need employers to help buoy and boost the housing prices in your neighborhood. We need those employers to help distribute the tax burden that we had referenced earlier. So, yes, it impacts you. The better your school district, the better funded your school district, the better performing your school district, the higher the likelihood that we'll see someone show up and say, I want to do business in Commerce City, and elsewhere in the district for that matter, and that will help our kids. So, yes, it matters. Yes, you need to get out and vote. Yes, you need to tell your neighbor about this. Don't assume that somebody else voting is going to make this happen. With that said, I would move that this council draft a resolution, ask staff rather to draft a resolution in support of this measure urgently.
Yeah, we just have a couple more people on the board, and we'll get to that. Councilman Moreno.
Joan, just quickly, you mentioned starting early, and I remember being one of the city council members in that meeting and really being in a state of disbelief about what you do with the resources that you have. We need to have this conversation. We need to have it at a larger scale. The state of Colorado is really hurting in terms of education. And while this isn't the ultimate solution, I hope that people realize that especially in a school district like 27J, this is the breaking point. We cannot continue to operate on the current funding that is that you have to work with. And even though I don't live in 27J and I can't vote for the mill levy, I am making sure that I talk to everyone that I know up in the northern range of Commerce City and elsewhere, because this is too important for our kids. And thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you. Councilman Benson?
Well, again, I was ready to second the motion made by Mr. McEldowney.
Okay, then Councilwoman Carson?
I won't be long. Mr. Diaz, I will tell you this chart. It actually sometimes gets held against us. People say, the rest of them should start stepping up to the plate and doing such a good job on these dollars. As Mr. Marino stated, it is the brink of disaster. The school district has cut every place it possibly can cut. It has pinched every penny it could possibly pinch for years now. One of the things I know I hear from citizens out there is that the state backfills. I'm not sure citizens fully understand it doesn't matter whether there's a law that states they have to. There's no money in the state. So the school districts are not getting that either. I would encourage all of those yes voters, if all of the yes voters, the supporters, will make sure that they vote. That's all we got to do, is if you're the yes, make sure you vote. Do not let that ballot sit there. Get it in the mail. This will pass if the supporters will just remember to do that. Don't wake up the next morning and say, I forgot to vote. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilwoman Carson. I want to thank you all for being here too as well and your passion. And I would have to agree with the other council members. It's clear that there's no money in the state for education, and that's a problem in and of itself that needs to be addressed. But I think that this is a good starting place for 27J, and I know that you've gone out before and tried to get it, and I don't know how anyone could look at this chart, these appalling numbers, and not give you a yes vote. So I have been calling people that I know quite a few people in the Northern Range, and asking them to please support it. Although I do live up here in the South as well, we know many people. So we're reaching out, we're calling, we're doing everything we can to support it. And I too would be in complete agreement with council on a resolution. So we have had a motion and a second for the resolution. So is everyone in favor of supporting a resolution? Okay, thank you, City Manager Flannery and City Attorney Gaylor. If you would move forward with preparing a resolution, that would be great.
I assume that was a yes vote from everybody?
I believe it's unanimous, everyone, yes? Thank you. It's a yes all the way down. All those in favor signify by saying yes? Yes.
Yes.
That's the answer we want everyone to give you is yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your presentation.
Really appreciate all of your efforts.
Absolutely. We're behind you 110%, so good luck, and we'll be right there with you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Next, we have a discussion about City Council retirement benefits, and I will now ask City Manager Flannery to introduce the item for this discussion.
Excuse me, I had one other comment to make about the school matter.
Okay.
There seems to be a misunderstanding or a misconception on the part of some people that this council has a lot more control over school funding than we do. And what we've done right now is just about everything that a city council can do in supporting a school mill levy override ballot measure by giving our approval. Each individual council member can go out and support or oppose any measure like that they want to, but other than that, and having the city itself, the city council itself, take a position on it, that's about all that a city council can do. We don't have anything to do with the funding of the school district, just like they don't have anything to do with our funding. But it's just a misconception, misunderstanding, I think, that I've heard about from various people that I've talked to over the past couple of months, and I just wanted to make sure that people are clear on that we've done right now everything that we can do. I wish we could do more, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you saying that, because in Brighton, the comments that I've heard is, if the school district needs so much money, why did you build that water park? But the school district didn't build that water park. And so I really appreciate what you said. There's just different pots of money, and we wish that the cities could give us money, but that's just not how it works. So thank you so much.
That's exactly the type of misunderstanding that I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman McEldowney.
And I apologize for extending this discussion, but it is so critical. We've talked in our last two council planning retreats about the challenge, this bogey, this big 1,000-pound gorilla we don't like to talk about, which is how the tax bill stacks up in the northern range of our city in particular. And it doesn't matter really what metro district you live in. You have a pretty steep bill by comparison to the other half of our community. And it's a pretty steep bill when you compare the northern half of our community to any other community in the metro area. In ballpark numbers, you're talking about $4,000 for a $250,000 to $300,000 house. That's a lot. And I think the concern that I hear from parents, or rather non-parents even more prominently, is I already pay so much. My tank is full. I can't give any more, even if this is so important. And so we've talked about this, and I will just put this thought back out for council as we put our priorities, start to put our thinking caps on relative to priority. We have got to sit down and have a discussion with the stakeholders in the northern range of our city about how we deal with this tax problem. Because until we can affect the math, those bills are going to stay high and people are going to have a reluctance. And I think our greatest enemy in passing this is not the fact that people don't see this as a priority, but that not only are we on the national stage fed up with talking about taxes, we have a legitimate issue with our Northern Range community about how that tax bill stacks up. On that same point, understanding that cities building water parks does not impact school districts funding classrooms. And so how do we as a council and how do we as communities help our citizens understand, and I think this is a duty incumbent on all of us in an elected office, how do we help people understand where their tax dollars go? We've got some graphics that have been circulated in the past. There is a graphic that's available on the city website today. You have to dig for it a little bit. But the fact is, it's one thing to see the list of things that the dollars and cents go to, but I don't think people understand what's behind that line item. And so to the extent we can work with our key partners to help get some definition about where those dollars go, I'd like to see us, with council's support, dedicate some page space in our city publication to speak to how that works. If we could time that urgently so that it is arriving in concert with mail-in ballots, and so people get some level of primer on the dollars that you're letting go of today are going to good use. They're going to these good uses, and just help clarify that, because I think it continues to be just such a critical gap in understanding.
Madam Mayor, Pro Tem, excuse me. I'll have to check with Ms. Halstead on the timing of the next newsletter. I'm guessing that we'll probably have one out before November. Yeah, it won't be in conjunction with the ballot being mailed, but it would be probably around November 1. But nonetheless, what we can do is send each of you an email, send the school district an email of how our taxes are broken out. That diagram of the dollar, I think, is what you're referring to.
I think the dollar is a great one, but I think there's a layer behind it that needs to come in, a definition. People, for example, the latest discussion I had, a neighbor chased me down, I was mowing my lawn, wanted to understand about the GID. And where do those dollars go? What are they buying me? What's the difference between my GID and my metro district? What's the difference between my metro district and my HOA? All of that, unless you're immersed in it, doesn't necessarily make sense. So how do we help people understand those things? Because they don't give you an owner's manual necessarily when you move in. And so how do you net that out in a fashion that people that makes it easier to get?
Sure.
Thank you. Councilman Benson.
You know, I know exactly what Mr. McEldowney is talking about, because I run into a lot of people that they have a lot to say about the heavy tax burden that we seem to have in the Northern Range. And I tell them that you only pay $60 a year to the city, which doesn't even cover your trash pickup. And I've asked them, go get me your tax bill. And they'll do that, and I'll go down the list and say, this is where this money is going, but only $38 or $60 a year on the average is going to the city, and that's all that we have control over, except for the Northern Infrastructure GID, which this same body has control over. And that's about 27 mills, I believe, but then I explained to them that money was used to build out 104th Avenue. But it's a matter of, it's an educational matter. I agree that people need to be educated about how their tax bill is broken down, although it's right on your tax bill. If you look at your tax bill, it's not going to be in a graphic image, but you can see I'm paying X number of dollars over here, and this number of dollars to the city, this number of dollars to the county, this number of dollars to the school district. That does need to be explained to people, and I guess the city probably can't do anything, spend any money to promote this bond issue. Am I right about that, Mr. Gaylor? Would that be a violation of the Fair Campaign Practices Act?
Well, that part is certainly true, but we as a city can spend money to explain what the taxes go for. And that's aside from the campaign issue. It's informing people what they're paying the taxes for, so that would certainly be legitimate.
Yeah, I guess there's kind of a fine line there. You have to be careful, because we can't spend any money, any public money on that. But I agree with what Mr. McEldowney said. We do need to educate people about that, because there's a common misunderstanding about exactly who's responsible for what and where is my tax dollar going. And I'm trying to clear that up with everybody that I meet, believe me. Thank you.
Thank you for that discussion, Council, and we'll move forward now with a discussion on City Council retirement benefits. City Manager Flannery?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. This item actually came from your budget retreat a couple weeks ago, and what we did is there was some discussion among council on whether you wanted to continue retirement benefits for council members after this one that we have done in the past. And I think the budget number is around $36,000 for this year. And basically wanted to come back and receive direction from council tonight on whether or not we want to carry this forward in the budget for legislative.
Okay. Council, I'm open to discussion. Councilman Moreno.
Yeah, as many people in the audience know, I was one of the people that brought this up at the council budget retreat, and it's something that I am sticking to. There, again, and I want to clear up, there's been misinformation on this item, and accusations that I would take away the retirement benefits of previously elected officials that are currently receiving it. That has never been part of my proposal. What I am proposing is that we effectively sunset this aspect of the benefit that council receives, primarily looking at the next election, that this election, next election in November, that these retirement benefits will cease on that date and going forward. That means that those members currently serving that are on the council that are not yet eligible for the program, that do not have 5 years of service, would be affected. Those that currently are serving on the council that do have the 5 years of qualifying service would not be affected. There's been some talk about, well, this is a small amount of money, and I would agree with that. It's a small amount of money for the retiree that they receive per month. But when you add it all together, the fund balance is $240,000. And that's money that could be going to roads and to parks and to trails. It's for me, a principle of the matter. We do not offer this benefit to our part-time city employees, and I don't see why we are special and that we deserve it above and beyond them. So I will continue to support this, and I hope and I encourage my other council members to join me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Diaz.
And I actually just have a question regarding the document that you prepared, Mr. McBroom, if that's okay. Where it says level of current benefits for years 2011, 2012, and 2013. It says 120 a month, 222. What do those numbers mean? The 222, 111, 567?
That's how many you're getting it in 11, 12, 13, right? 2011 to 20.
I think he's asking for some explanation on how we arrive at these numbers.
Well, that, and I guess I'm trying to figure out if there's two people getting 120 a month, why are there 3 columns or 3 sets of numbers for each one? Oh, okay. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Councilman McEldowney, would you mind just explaining
Yes,
for the benefit of the audience?
For folks that have access to this material online or have downloaded the agenda, there's a section in the document that talks about level of current benefits for years 2011, 2012, and 2013. The data just isn't nested in columns, so you see a row for $120 per month with the number 2, 2, 2. If you align that under the year as a column header, then you're looking at 2 people in year 2011 and 2 people in year 2012 and 2 people in year 2013 receiving a payment of $120 each. And then you can carry that same thing down each row.
That's correct, right? Okay, thank you.
Which, just for reference, there's a little chunk of text above there which talks about the minimum and maximum payments to participants. And I believe that $1,400 to $6,700 per year is the aggregate to all payees. Is that right?
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Carson?
I don't know where to start here. First of all, I commend Mr. Marino for bringing this up, even though it's a very touchy item, and there has been a lot of misunderstanding of who would this affect. This would affect those going forward today, such as myself, that I would never be able to receive this. I know it sounds like minuscule amounts. The first thing that I will stand on is, as a representative of this city, we have employees that work for this city that do not achieve, they don't get a benefit such as this. I don't know a part-time employee anywhere who gets a benefit such as this. And we're almost even less than part-time employees. I know nobody's looking at the chart here, but because we don't have term limits here, you can do 2 terms, set out a term, do 2 terms, set out a term, and so on, as long as you can keep getting elected. So it keeps adding to your account. But I'll use if my math is correct, I'll just use myself, that if I just did 2 term setting here and we keep this in. What I have figured is that the city then would pay me over the years, 25, if I collect 25 years after I am done serving, the city would pay me somewhere around $50,000. And I see somebody shaking their head. Maybe my math is wrong, but I don't think it is wrong. Today, on one of the programs I was watching, it gave the life expectancy of a female today, and that's 85 years old. So in that case, you can add more money to that. I come from a family of long-living females. Most of them live to be 90 or 95 years old. So you can continue adding to that. I do not believe that this city, because I sat here as a representative, which I consider a privilege, should pay out to me $50,000, $60,000 in these benefits when our own employees do not get this. I am not here to question what the past council was thinking. I'm sure that their intentions were well thought out, and maybe they were not seeing it this. I've heard from some that says this is what gets qualified candidates to run. I will speak for myself. I had no clue this was here until I was already elected and the first budget was presented to us. And there was a couple of us new ones sitting here who said, what is this item? So it is not why I ran, and I would encourage anybody who runs for this seat, because they're going to get this retirement, rethink what you're doing. Because you should have more of a commitment to this city than thinking this city is going to pay you a monthly check at a certain point. But until we can, as a city, provide this for our employees that are part-time, I don't think that we are entitled to it.
Thank you. Councilman Bullock.
I just was going to ask the city manager, the current fund balance on this as of the end of last year is $240,529.36 that they used to fund this. How will it be funded for the people? I mean, I have no objection to this coming to a halt. How will it be funded for the employee, the former council people that are receiving this now?
We would just, Madam Mayor, Pro Tem, and Councilman Bullock, we would just earmark a specific account, just like any account payable, for any type of benefit or other types of monetary tracking that we do, so that it would stay in place.
And like Mr. Marino said, there's been a lot of misinformation about this out there. Any of the council people that are eligible to receive this are not going to lose this. Any of the council people that have receiving it now aren't going to lose this. This would be a stop as of this election in November, and any of the council people that are not eligible will not receive it in the future, because it'll be an item that will be no longer offered to council people. So the misinformation out there that we are trying to take the pension away from people that are already getting it is wrong. Everybody that is eligible for it, that has had their 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, will be funded at the amount that they are funded at right now, and nothing is going to change. It's just going to change that anybody that would have received it after this, reaching their benchmark of 5 years, will not receive it. And basically, the people that are eligible, that would be receiving it, it's okay with them. They're sitting on council right now. It is no one that isn't up here right now. So I want this misinformation to kind of stop and let everybody know that nobody is taking anything away from we aren't taking suckers away from babies, and we aren't doing anything wrong. We're just stopping, and I'm not saying we're doing this. What this is being proposed is to stop it as of November of this year.
Thank you. Councilman Benson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bullock. I think you covered several of the things that I wanted to cover. I guess I'm still a little unsure about what's going to happen to this $240,000 that we have in the fund right now. Are you saying we're going to do away with that fund, but then the city's just going to pay what's due out of the general fund?
That portion will remain intact.
The 240
It's
will
just
remain.
that future, it's just like a Kaiser doctor doesn't accept any more patients. That's basically what it amounts
Okay.
to.
But the 240 will remain intact to fund existing obligations.
Correct. And it may, I don't know what the final adjustments might be, given who is still eligible when that time comes.
All right. But as long as, I mean, would you call this a vested right, Mr. Gaylor, at this point, or is it something that could be changed, I guess?
I can't call it a vested right, because council always reserves its right to pass an ordinance where that's not a property right being taken away, and this is not a property right, but it certainly means that the way this council was considering this matter is that the program will be continue on indefinitely for those already receiving it.
It sounds like with this action, we'll be making it a vested right, or?
Well, you'll be making it, it's an ordinance that will impose it, but it's always subject to a future council 5 years from now, as an example, changing the ordinance again, because council reserves that right.
Okay.
But for now, that's the best you can do, and you're doing what you can do.
So what,
So there'll be an ordinance coming before you.
all right.
Before the change of council, so that this council can vote on it, since you're already familiar with the item, you've discussed it, it's been reviewed by you, and so the plan is it'll be on the agenda for 2 readings prior to the November 1 election.
And do we need council approval to address the staff to do that tonight? Do we need to do that tonight? Or is that just?
It's already in the works, but
Right.
it certainly doesn't hurt to have it in the minutes that you've directed staff to do it. I mean, we're planning to do it, but
Well, I would ask for a consensus of the council that the staff be directed to prepare
Well, I'm sorry,
such an ordinance.
Councilman Benson, we still have lots of discussion first before we get to that point.
Sorry, what?
I have still several people on the board that want to talk before we get to that point.
Well, I understand that, but I'm still asking that there be a consensus.
Well, I'm sure we'll get to that soon. So, Councilman Moreno.
Just a couple of items to follow up on Mr. Benson's comments. I'm not quite sure what a vested right is. I'm not incredibly adept in legal terminology, but I do see it as honoring the commitment that we made to previously elected officials, which is why I did not propose that we end the retirement benefits for those currently receiving it. I have resolutions resolutions that we have approved in the last 10 years and added up how much we've appropriated to the elected officials retirement fund in varying resolutions over the years. And over the past 10 years, we've had to supplant $260,000 into that fund to keep up with the growing demand of retiring elected officials. That's not a small chunk of change. We have a situation where the cost savings will not be immediate, but it'll end a practice, like Mr. Flannery said, where going forward, we won't be adding more people to the fund. We won't have to appropriate, most likely, additional resources to the fund in future budgets. Councilwoman Carson, your math was not incorrect. Let's say that someone becomes eligible at 60, is lucky enough to live to 85, like you mentioned. It is $50,000 that this city pays to that retired elected official in that time. I would just hope that we make the right decision tonight to sunset this provision of the benefit that we receive and do right by the taxpayers of Commerce City.
Councilman McEldowney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I think most of the comments have touched on the points that I wanted to raise, but I'll just pick up where Mr. Moreno left off and say, let's take that math for an individual, and let's say that Mr. Moreno, for example, ended up at 5 years very early in his years and had a 30 to 85 trajectory to sustain. I think the concern I have, and I know a point that Mr. Moreno and I have talked about one-on-one, is that what happens when you have a dozen or more individuals who are living longer and collecting this benefit concurrently? What is our future burden? That's a very challenging number to budget for. And again, just sort of building on the prior comments, I think makes great sense. Let's stem this with this council and put those dollars to some higher purpose that the broader community can take advantage of.
Thank you. Councilwoman Teeter.
Yes, I have a couple questions for you, Mr. Gaylor. At what age do council members start receiving this pension?
I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I believe it's age 60.
Age 60?
Is that right?
Okay. And what year was this passed? And do you remember which council members, a couple that were on council at that time?
You have that data, Brian? Mr. McBroom, can you?
Okay. I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, me too.
I've always known it to be in place, so.
The first ordinance that authorized the benefit was adopted in 1986. 1986. Council members on council at that time, let me verify 1986. March of 1986, Busby, Christensen, Cole, Grady, Kite, Nakagawa, Russell, Tate, and Vigil.
Okay. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Bullock.
I have a couple of issues on this. Now, this is going to come up for an ordinance. At the time of the first reading of the ordinance, anybody that objects to this, that is audience member or anything, can come forward and state their objection. And judging by how good they are as a seller, they could sway votes. So it could go either way when the ordinance comes. Because we're having a consensus tonight to put it on, to bring forth an ordinance, doesn't mean that the ordinance is going to be passed. That's it, because I can guarantee you on first reading, you will be seeing some people in the audience that you haven't seen for a while that are going to come by and object. Either they don't know what's going on, or they've heard something different, or they want to object to the fact that they feel that this is something that a council person should get. Secondly, knowing that a council, that this is going to sunset, and future councils can completely cut it out altogether, how would you vest it?
I think it would help council if I explain what the vested property right really means. It means that, and this is under a state statute, by the way, it means that you have ownership of a property right that you have at this time, and then the city is attempting to take it away from you. An obvious example is you own a piece of property, and you've got zoning on that property, and you've developed the property, and now the city in a future year is attempting to change the zoning, which would then take away your use of that property because it would not be in compliance with the zoning law. That's an example of a vested property right that if you did take it away, you, the city, would be liable for payment to the owner of the property for the reduced value of that property. Now, what we're talking about here is a right that, is a right that's been given by an ordinance, but any time an ordinance is passed of this nature by a city council doesn't mean that a future city council can't change that ordinance because a promise to pay something is not considered a current vested property right. It's a promise to pay something in the future, and therefore the promise to pay in the future is not vested as of today because it's a future property right. And that means that if you had money owed to you, as an example, under this retirement plan, and it hadn't yet been paid to you, but it accrued the right, for whatever reason, the city was delinquent and say it hadn't paid it for 6 months through some oversight or something, and now the council tried to take that away from you, that's a vested property right because it's a right that's already accrued and you have it coming to you as of that date. It's not a promise to pay something in the future, and that's the distinction. Any questions on what I've just explained?
I understand the explanation, so there's no way that this council can ever vest this for the people that is going to be get it before it sunsets.
There's no way legally that you can bind a future city council to commit to what the ordinance says today. Because the future city council has the right, just like you do, to consider an ordinance as you are considering it, and a future city council could change it. But as has been indicated, if nothing more, it's certainly a moral obligation that city existing beneficiaries of this program have been receiving and have been counting on it, and it's been a city commitment through the years since 1986 to do this. So if nothing more, it's certainly a moral obligation. It's a promise that you're going to do something in the future, and then you don't keep the promise. That's what it comes to.
Bob, could you also explain that this does not go to the next of kin if the council person passes away? It passes away, this pension passes away with them.
When the ordinance was first adopted in 1986, that was made clear. It's a personal right of the council member, but if that council member passes away, it does not accrue then to the heirs to go on in perpetuity forever to the heirs of that person. It only goes to the former council member.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Carson.
I just hope that it's very clear out there that those of us who agree with sunsetting this are trying to be fair. And if you are vested in this already, it does not change. Anybody, correct, Mr. Gaylor, anybody who is, even if you're seated up here and you're vested into this, it will still be there for you. It's those of us who are not vested with the 5 years yet.
Under this current ordinance, the way you're proposing it and the way I've got it tentatively drafted for you, you're absolutely right. If there's an entitlement as of today, including the members sitting on this council, if there's an entitlement, then when you get off the council, you've served the 5 years, and when you reach age 60, you're entitled then to receive it under this ordinance as proposed.
And then I do have a couple more questions. I guess it was first adopted in '86. I'm under the understanding it has had at least one increase to it. Can you tell me how many or what it started at, where it's at now, and
There was an increase.
Mr. McBroom is checking that. I don't have that recollection available for you.
Mr. Gaylor, there was an increase. I remember that.
There was.
I think it took place when Mike Bonello, Rocky Teeter, all of those were on there. Debbie Mitchell?
Ms. Teeter will certainly miss your history.
Well, for council's information, we certainly have that information available in the city records, but I just don't have it at my fingertips.
Okay.
Mr. McBroom
Mr.
does
McBroom,
have
do you
it.
have it?
Okay.
Okay, great.
Sorry about that. When it was originally created in 1986, it was $20 times the years of service per month. I'm not seeing it here, but according to Mr. Tinklenberg, it was raised and then in 2002 put back at that same amount, which is where it stands currently. $20 times the years of service per month.
So at some point, it was
No.
increased and then it was decreased?
No, it was a proposed increase from $20 to $50 a month for time of service.
So when it started, it is exactly today?
What it is when it started. Now, there is a misconception that they chose to increase this and then they rolled it back. No, they chose to increase it and then they got beat up and they decided to leave it alone. So that is what happened in 2002, and there's a little bit more history that goes along with that, but it has nothing to do with this, so I won't give you that right now.
And my understanding of this type of retirement is that the city has to be able to be fully funded into this. So it straps the city for a large amount of money because you're trying to speculate. It is a commitment. This city is required, no matter what happens, it's a bill that has to be paid, correct?
As long as the ordinance is on the books, the city has to budget to fund the ordinance.
And
And
so
that would apply then for next year.
And I'm not sure that anybody out there is fully understanding the grasp of this because, as an example, the way our ordinance is now, that you can serve 2 terms set out, every time somebody comes back here and gets reelected, even though you're looking at myself or Mr. Marino and saying that we have to do at least another 3 years before we would be qualified for this. If I was somebody who had already served 2 terms and was reelected, I would start increasing from the very minute again. I would have already been collecting for the 8 years that I had served here, had that built up in my pot. Now I've been elected again for another 4. So it's very difficult for this city to figure out how to fully fund this and how to speculate into how much money you have to carry in there because, first of all, none of us can predict an outcome of an election. We certainly can't predict who's going to run and who's going to win. If everybody out there that was running today had already served on this council 2 terms, well, then it would be an easier speculation of saying, well, when the new ones come on, we know for a fact we have to start adding. But it's something that straps this city that I think when residents fully understand it, and I'm not blaming past council. I don't want any past council to think that I am putting any blame there. I just feel an obligation as the council that sits here today to go forward on this and sunset this and let the city take the money, as Mr. McEldowney said, and put it someplace where the citizens actually, it affects a larger amount of people.
Thank you. Councilman McEldowney.
I just want to add to Ms. Carson's comments that, of the members sitting up here who's essentially voting against themselves getting this benefit. And so I think off the top of my head, it would be Mr. Moreno, Mr. Benson, yourself, myself, and Mr. Diaz, who would be ineligible based upon an affirmative vote on this suggested change. So, I mean, just note that we're not trying to lock ourselves in here and then deny future council members of a benefit that we're going to be entitled to for a good number of us up here. And so I think the other point to Ms. Carson's is that there is that consideration for folks who come back and do extend their service to the community. That ultimately becomes a fairly sizable commitment that the city has to sustain for an individual of that nature. So I don't know, I think we've probably talked around this one every which way we can. I think there was a motion made earlier. We can.
Yes, Mr. Moreno.
Just one last comment to Mr. Gaylor's point. As long as this ordinance is on the books, we are obligated to fund it, which is why what is being proposed, the tentative proposal, is not to repeal the ordinance, but to amend it, and to amend it to add that sunset provision. So just wanted to put that clarification out there, and would hope for council consensus on this.
Finally, Mr. Bullock.
I just wanted to, if this ordinance goes through, only 14 people will be receiving a pension from the city. You know, it's going to be at various amounts, but in 2013 will be the maximum amount of people that will be receiving a pension, and that will be 14 people at various amounts. So I just want that to be out there so people don't speculate that there's going to be 20 or 30 people receiving this pension. Only 14.
Okay, so I think we're at a point where we can take a consensus now. Does council agree with that? So I'm just going to go down the line, starting with you, Mr. Bullock. Yes? Councilman McEldowney. Councilman Diaz.
Yes.
Councilwoman Teeter.
Yes.
Councilman Moreno.
Yes.
Councilman Benson.
Yes.
Councilwoman Carson.
Yes.
And I will be a yes as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll get the ordinance prepared and on the agenda. I just have one question to help me in drafting this ordinance. Mayor Natal will qualify after the election because he'll go off the council.
Okay.
He's 60 years of age. He'll leave office mid-November, that date in there. It makes it easier for finance if I make this effective starting December 1 to make it in an even month rather than prorate. Does that have any problems with doing that to make it effective December 1?
No. Does anyone have a problem with that?
My question for you, Mr. Gaylor, is that we have previously elected officials that are running again. Would that then qualify those returning previously elected officials to add to their years of service if we make the sunset December 1?
No, it would not affect anyone who's not entitled as of the date the ordinance is adopted, and none of them are 60 years of age except the mayor.
Okay, I'm okay.
I think I understand what you're asking, and I
That's not necessarily
True,
Bob,
right.
Because if we have a reorganization, if we have a reorganization before December 1st, even though you aren't 60 years of age, you would get 1 year added to it because you would be, if you have already served your 5 and you were eligible to get it, that person would receive 1 more year because we are making it after he is or she is or they are put on council. So technically, and just throwing a name out in the air, if Sean was elected and we reorganized on the 3rd week of November and this ordinance went into effect December 1st, he would be eligible for that year that he is starting as, he would be eligible for 1 more month. But it would add to his years because he would be, instead of 8 years, it would be going into year number 9. Am I not correct?
Well, to qualify, it has to be for a full month, but maybe just to eliminate this discussion and confusion, it's easier, I mean, finance can easily prorate it, so let's just make it effective date of the ordinance if that's an issue. Let's do that.
Okay. I mean, Mr. Gaylor, I did have a question. I would assume that there would probably be a proration for anyone that was involved from the change from April to November anyway, for those extra months.
For example,
Right.
I believe Mayor Tell is the only one that'd be affected, because he's the only one that's 60 years old going on.
Right, right.
So it would be, he would be prorated from the date he leaves office until December 1.
Well, I was actually thinking since it's years of service, some of us actually ended up with a little extra 8.5 months because of the change from April to November. So I would assume, and Roger's shaking his head, yes, I would assume that would be prorated out. That's my question.
Whatever years of service.
Does that
or
make
months of
sense, Roger?
service. Right.
Okay, all right. Did anyone else have any questions?
Just quickly to add to the confusion on this issue.
It is a little confusing.
The only
Sorry.
example of people affected, it does not cease at Mr. Ford. If we do the effective date and Councilman Benson is also reelected, Councilman Benson would then have 5 years of service and would also become eligible for the program. So it is an issue that I think Mr. Gaylor will work out and will talk about on first reading.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney, did you have anything else?
No, I think we've touched on it, but I don't know that we've said it as explicitly as it might need to be stated in the ordinance modification, which is if you come in with 5 years and you are reelected in November, you accrue no further years, period, right? The program is stopped.
Yes,
So-
I think we all understand that, yes? Okay. All right, next we're going to have a discussion on policy for use of discretionary funds. City Attorney Gaylor, would you please lead us in that discussion?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem and members of council, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to introduce it. This is also an item that has come from previous discussions in council and also from the budget retreat. What we'd like to do, because it does tie to your legislative budget, is next week we'll bring the legislative budget back to you. I think with the information tonight, we have some preliminary data that we can look towards future budget years depending on the outcome of the ordinance after first and second reading. Secondly, on the discretionary funds and how it ties to travel, that was the other thing that you, as a council, left in somewhat of a general future discussion. So we're going to bring that to you next week, but this ties to that. So if travel comes up in this discussion, because it is related in some ways, I think it's something that we'll get into more detail next week with the actual legislative budget for you to finally approve, if that makes sense.
Okay, so do we want to just hold our discussion until next week when we have that information, or?
What I'm recommending is that Mr. Gaylor did put this policy together,
Yeah.
and that you certainly discuss it,
Okay.
but but that next week, when we have the actual legislative budget, it'll probably reflect some of these policies that you're looking at tonight.
Okay.
And tonight, we're only here for discussion. There's not going to be any action taken on this tonight. That's for the upcoming meeting. So if there's any question on that, that's, and the way the agenda is set, it's just for discussion, it's not for action.
Okay.
Now, at the outset, I'd like to make it clear, in looking at the Council Policy 19, which is the discretionary funds policy, that this policy, as of now, the number is $1,500 for each council member. And of course, you budget each year for the discretionary funds. So as Mr. Flannery has indicated, the budget item comes up as a separate discussion as to how much you're going to put into discretionary funds. But the important point I'm making is that we're only talking discretionary funds. Travel policy is a separate item because travel policy deals with the expenses that are incurred by council members on trips that are authorized as an ongoing basis for you, and the obvious one is CML and NLC. Those fall into the travel policy, clearly. Now, the discretionary funds, then, is what I'm going to be talking about, and only the discretionary funds tonight. So if you'll look at the council policy, which is on page 16 of your packet, which is the last 2 pages of the packet, first of all, I want to make clear, too, that the expenditure of discretionary funds still has to meet the requirements that you, as council members, cannot expend taxpayers' money except for purposes that are in the public interest for the city of Commerce City. And if you look under subparagraph B, I've made some examples for you to make clear that when you're talking about expenditure of discretionary funds, it has to be for a function that in some way is tied to a benefit that the city is going to receive. And numbers 1, 2, and 3 under paragraph B are good examples, and for the benefit of the audience, I'm going to recite those for you. It includes events, including social events, that gives the opportunity to a council member to promote, advertise, or disclose the benefits, advantages, events, and activities existing or taking place in the city of Commerce City. So it's got to be tied to some benefit that the city will receive by your attendance at this event. Also, number 2, it includes events, including social events where attendance enables development of relationships with others that have the potential of benefiting Commerce City in the future, such as going to an event that involves attendance by, as an example, contractors or other city dignitaries or city employees, where you have an opportunity to discuss with them the benefits in Commerce City of coming here or developing a relationship that will in some way in the future benefit Commerce City. An obvious example is a contractor who might, or a developer who might in the future be interested in developing in Commerce City, and you're developing a rapport with that individual. Another, number 3, as you'll note there, is attendance as a member of a committee that serves a governmental purpose related to activities and functions of the city, such as attendance as a member of a CML or NLC committee. I'm talking about committee. I'm not talking about the event itself, CML or NLC. That's a whole other area that's covered under travel policies. But I'm talking about you being chosen as a committee member for one of those organizations, and now you want to attend it outside the city, take a trip, and attend that function, that's a benefit to the city that you're on that committee, and that's certainly authorized for an expenditure of discretionary funds. Now, paragraph C, I make it clear that expenditure of discretionary funds shall not be required for any event authorized for payment from city funds. I mean, I'm talking about the legislative budget, where there's a budget item for attendance at CML or for attendance at NLC, and then you as a council decide how many of you are going, but that's out of city funds. That's not out of your discretionary funds. So I'm just making that clear there so there's no misunderstanding. Then also, there's been some issue about accumulation of discretionary funds because it's so much budgeted per year. So if, and it's a calendar year we're talking about, so if December 31 rolls around and you still have discretionary funds in there, they don't accumulate for the following year. So if you have $500 left over in 2011, and then 2012, you're budgeted $1,500 again, you don't have $2,000 now to spend for discretionary funds. It lapses December 31, and so now you start brand new with your new appropriated amount for discretionary funds. The next item I want to point out is that in E, because there's such an issue about what qualifies as discretionary funds, and I think from almost all of you I've received an inquiry at one time or another, does this qualify for discretionary funds? And I've attempted to make it more clear in this policy, but even then, there are going to be questions that arise. And so, if feasible, it's suggested here that it comes before council for your approval to tell council before you go, if feasible, what you're intending to do. And then if there's an objection, then you, of course, you need to vote on it. But if there's not an objection, then that's fine by consensus. You can spend your discretionary funds for that purpose. Now, here's the kicker, though. If there is an immediate need and we don't have a council session scheduled before you have to have an answer, then there has to be some type of mechanism here for you to get an approval or okay for these discretionary funds. And that brings you to the top of the next page, where the council needs to choose an option. And as I see it, you've got any of three options. One is you can have a committee of 2 council members, and I say 2 advisedly because if you go to 3, then you got the open meetings law to deal with, which doesn't work very well when you have to have a sudden decision. You can't advertise. You don't have time to advertise. So you have a committee of 2, or you can have the mayor, as an example, or you can have the city attorney do it, such as what you've been doing in the past. That's your sole discretion as to how you want to decide that, but you need to decide that to give me some direction as to how to write that into the policy as to what you'd prefer. I don't mind continuing to do it, but and it's worked fairly well, but it might be better to have a committee of 2 to make that decision, but that, again, is solely your discretion. And we'll save that until I'm finished here, and then we'll come back to addressing that. F could be somewhat controversial because it provides that it shall not be assigned, transfer, or used for persons other than a city council member, except for assignment or use for a 501c3 organization or a government entity, and then with approval as provided in paragraph E above. Now, the problem with that is that if you've got a situation that you feel you want to assign it to and make it available to say, an individual to buy school books and school supplies and so forth, this would not allow you to assign it to an individual. It would have to be to the school district for administering, and it could not be to a private enterprise for administering, such as Walmart. It'd have to be to a 501c3. But I found, the reason I put that in there, I found it difficult for me on occasion to administer at your direction that aspect of this whole program, because I get a request that really sounds like a good request, but on the other hand, it opens up a door where it's difficult to control down the road, and it is city funds that we're talking about here. But that's for your consideration as to whether or not you like subparagraph F, you want to leave it in, or you don't want to leave it in. G, that's pretty obvious. You can't use the funds for political purposes, because that's a violation of a state law. Now, that's not to say you can't attend a political program or political situation where you're going to have politicians circulating, but if you can say that, hey, it's good for me to be there because I can develop a relationship with these people, and it's in the future it's good for the city to have that relationship. That's okay. It's just that you can't use it for a political campaign or contribute to a political campaign, something like that. And then to avoid the issue about accountability, and that was raised, I know I got an email from Councilman McEldenny addressing filing reports and forms to make sure that there's a record of what has transpired. This provides that within 30 days of your expenditure, you need to file a report of the expenditure that you made in order that there's a clear record, so that you can't save your report, say, for 6 months later, and especially it causes a problem if it goes into the subsequent year. If you're talking December and you don't file it till 3-4 months later, when the auditing is already completed, that's a problem for the city. So that's why I say 30 days. So even if it's December, 30 days still allows it in January, which is still okay from finances point of view. And that's a quick summary of what we have here, and so I'm open for questions and discussion.
Thank you. Councilman Bullock.
Bob, I have a couple issues, and my number one issue is after we've finished our discussion on this, and after we've finished our discussion on the travel policy next week, I would like to continue those to the next council for the decision, because it isn't going to affect this council. It's basically going to affect councils forward. And so if that's all right with the council, that we give discussion that'll be on the record for the next council to go over and look at and hear, but let them make the $1,500 decision on what's going to happen with next year's money and the travel policy, because I just feel that there is 1, 2, 3, 4 of us up here now that I know will be here on the next council. So it will be a guide to the people that join the next council. And that's just if council okays this. If they say no, they want to make the decision, then I not won that battle. On number 3 of subparagraph B, using this money for CML or NLC committees, if you are on a standing committee that you know meets at intervals throughout the years, steering committees for different groups, I would like this subparagraph to be under the travel policy, because we would still end up going into travel policy money being on a subcommittee because of what it would take to go to those. And the reason I say this is that some of us get on committees with NLC, CML, and it's a personal and city development thing that brings back information to the city that we wouldn't get otherwise. It brings personal development to this person that they wouldn't get otherwise, because when I was on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, you would not believe the information I brought back to the city on transportation and infrastructure that helped formulate some policy. I believe now, being on the Leadership Training Committee, I'm going out and doing what they're asking to say everybody on council should go to these training sessions, because whether you know it or not, you always learn something new in training, and it adds to the personal development of council, which adds to a better council. You know, there are people here that know a lot about a lot of things, but then they always find out something new about something they don't know. And I know that there's been a lot of meetings that you've gone to over your years that, being a lawyer, all of a sudden somebody brought something new to you and you said, wow, that will help this city. So that's why I would like this subparagraph 3 to be incorporated in the travel policy number 5 also, or just directly in travel policy number 5.
Those points are well made, and I might ask, if I may, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, as a rule, how many committees do council members get to serve on with NLC or CML? Is it just one, or do you?
Yes.
Just one?
The most you can do, because otherwise you're really overloading yourself for failure.
And I've always been told that they really, when they're making the selection with the high competition to get onto the committees from everyone across the United States, that they really don't like to give you more than one when you're lucky just to get on one. That's what I've been told by NLC leadership, and I'm sure Mr. Bullock, Councilman Bullock, probably has heard that as well.
And how many meetings do you normally have to attend when you're on these committees a year?
2 besides the 2. I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilman Bullock.
It's 2, but generally, if you're on a steering committee, and that's the difference in being on the committee. Being selected for a steering committee is the honor of being on a committee.
Right.
Because the competition is really fierce on people that want to guide and set policy for the steering committees that go back to the committees. Some councils can't do it because they don't have the benefits to do it, but if on the LTC, there had to be 100 people that were competing to be on the steering committee. So it's you're competing with the best in the nation.
Absolutely.
Well, see, I didn't know, some of these details, so I put it in there to prompt this very type of discussion. So that's an item then that's easily deleted if council feels it should be deleted. I ask these questions just to get more information to help you in making this decision.
Okay. Councilman Moreno?
Well, I'm going to have to disagree, and, I serve on a NLC committee as well. I'd like to see this, not only this language stay in discretionary funds, but see it be made more restrictive. I believe that if you choose to serve on a policy committee, then that's a choice that you make, that you budget accordingly with your discretionary funds that you have available. And if over and above you need more money for travel to attend those policy committees, you can come and bring that to council, and council will individually approve it case by case. So I would like to actually see that provision stay in the council policy CP19. Also, I'd like to see added to Section G, the campaign purposes, I'd like to see added that you cannot expend discretionary funds on partisan events. This is a nonpartisan council. I think that's a line that we should maintain. Whether it be you attend the annual dinner for the Colorado Democratic Party or the Colorado Republican Party, it doesn't matter. This is a nonpartisan council, and I feel that we should maintain that integrity. That's the suggestions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Benson.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I agree with Mr. Marino about not allowing any city funds to be spent on events that involve partisan politics. Like he says, we're a nonpartisan group. And if we want to go to some partisan political event, that's just going to be up to us to pay for out of our personal funds. Under item B and 1, 2, 3, under item B, now you've got events, including social events. Would that include ward meetings?
Ward meetings?
Well, I know Councilwoman Teeter and I went together last year. We spent about $800 each out of our discretionary funds to get out a notification of a Ward 2 meeting where the main topic of discussion was 60, 61, and 101. But that, because the council refused to provide any funds for notification, we had to do something to get the word out. So could that be maybe specifically included so we'll know this is something that you're going to have to use your discretionary funds for?
Certainly. Is that number 2, did you say? Which one are you looking at?
Well, it could be under 1 or 2. It's an event, including social events. I don't know that that's broad enough to include ward meetings or what. Social events to give the opportunity to promote, advertise, or disclose the benefits, advantages, events, and activities existing or taking place in the city of Commerce City. Maybe that's broad enough to include a ward meeting.
I think so.
Okay.
Would you like to specifically say?
Maybe just say including ward meetings.
That would, from my perspective, that would be fine to make it more clear so there's no misunderstanding for the future.
All right. And also, it's been kind of a gray area for me to try to figure out what is paid for by the city for educational type workshops that we go to, and which ones of those should come out of the discretionary funds. I don't know how we, and these come about for me through E470, or perhaps Dr. Cog, where there's E470 will pay for one big event a year. But there are other workshops that are going on, maybe 8 or 9 of them going on in the year. And I know back in May, I went to a workshop, and that was paid for by the city, did not come out of my discretionary funds because it was an educational type of expense. And I don't know, what is council policy CP5? I don't know exactly what that.
That's travel policy.
Travel policy, okay, that's what.
Madam Mayor and Councilman Benson, if I could, I think the actual travel budget that you all look at, if you are on a National League of Cities committee, or if you're on a specific board, such as yourself with E470, that you know that there's going to be events that come up in that next year, then we need to list those in the actual legislative budget. So everybody can look at that and say, okay, Jim, you're going to XYZ conference and such and such. If E470 is picking it up, then you probably don't need to put it in the budget. Right. If something comes up that isn't budgeted, then you have, I think, 2 options. You can come to the council and say, there's this great training going on in downtown Denver for E470 on transportation. Would you guys okay this? Or you can use your discretionary to do that.
I guess I'd like to see that defined a little bit better, because I was unclear when I disclosed this trip to council back in, I think, March or April, and it was okayed. I didn't know whether it was going to come out of my discretionary funds or whether it was going to be included under our legislative budget. I guess it wound up being included under the legislative budget, but it's just kind of hard to tell in advance sometimes about how that's going to be paid for. If we could just have a little more clarification, you know, if it's an educational type thing, I'd just like to see a little more clarification on that for workshops that are educational. I guess those are my only comments. We need to have, I think this is a good policy to have so that we know what is the difference here. I guess what we're talking about here is the difference between discretionary funds, the legislative budget, and travel policy. Would those be three different things, or would you include travel policy in the legislative budget?
Well, all of them relate to all of these discussions. That's, you know, part of the travel policy really is just a matter of you all on the committees that you're on identifying what's coming up in the next year. If you don't anticipate it, then there's options to come to the council and request it or pay for it out of discretionary. So, I mean, I think the travel policy will reflect some of the details. I think the amount of what you want in the budget is a reflection of the council's desires to attend certain types of trainings or conferences. So if there's something that E470 is going to offer next year that you can ask their executive director that might be coming up, then you put that in the budget for next week's discussion.
Okay.
So, and then if something does pop out that you didn't anticipate, then you have a couple options, discretionary or come to the council and specifically ask if it's okay to go ahead and go.
Okay, thank you.
I think, if I may, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, address this by saying that, and I'll add an additional subparagraph under B to include educational events or programs that are not otherwise covered under the travel policy, which would be included in the legislative budget. That kind of has a catch-all to it then.
Right. If it's not included in the legislative budget.
Yeah,
okay.
if it's not, yeah.
Okay, Councilwoman Carson.
I will agree with my two fellow council members that I don't believe discretionary funds should ever be used for any events that are partisan politics. I don't think citizens would appreciate that. I don't appreciate that. And F, I truly do appreciate you putting that in there. While intentions are well meant, it is not our money to go out and individually give, to do interviews, to decide which citizen of our city gets the dollars in our fund. And I don't think any of us want citizens campaigning us for those dollars. Right now, I feel like we were looking at this to tighten it up, and I almost feel like we're loosening it up. I would encourage NLC and CML to really take a look at how these members that serve on these committees, where they come from, how this is paid for, because I'm not saying they're not important, but Commerce City has been fortunate in having revenue that has still allowed us to be able to do these things. Many cities have tightened up their travel policies extendedly. So what does that mean? That if you're a city that money is tight, you don't get this type of representation there. What would it cost the city if all 9 of us served on one of these? I truly do not believe the benefit is there for all 9 of us to serve on a steering committee. And I'll just put it out there. I think it's very unfair how these are funded through NLC and CML. I think that NLC and CML need to figure this out. Whether cities somehow all pay some kind of an equal fair share for these committee members to be traveling, whether there's a lot more video conferencing, I don't know. But it really is a burden on some cities that they cannot afford that burden, and so zero participation.
Limits limits the participation, yes.
Absolutely, it does.
And it is certainly true that CML does not pay travel expenses, gas mileage, or anything for attendance at those committee meetings.
Correct.
That's a fact.
And like I said, I just, the way that it is set now, all 9 of us could serve on these committees. I don't believe the city would truly benefit from that.
Now,
And-
if I may,
Mhm.
now, I did provide an escape clause in
Okay.
here in paragraph 5, that any time discretionary funds are to be expended, then it needs to come, I don't mean 5, I mean E. It needs to come before city council if you have an advance notice. And normally for those kinds of activities, you're going to have advance notice. And if you object, then of course you have a vote. Now, I don't know if you like that escape clause because it puts you on the spot when a council member is asking for that, but it does mean that it's not a carte blanche approval of what we got here even. It needs to come before city council for your approval, and if there's an objection, then you have a vote on it. Now, if it happens that it's such an urgent matter that you don't have a council meeting scheduled, which you have once a week, so that's going to be fairly rare, but then you have this idea of 2 on a committee or the city attorney's office or somebody approving it. But, so there is some room for control on this thing, even though you put it in the council policy. It doesn't mean that all of these things are necessarily approved in advance. They need to come before you for action.
If I could just add to that, I think the policy, this policy and the travel policy are your general rules of thumb. The common sense part of it is really in the budget that you all approve. So if you are wanting to, as a body, say, if you're on an NLC committee or a CML committee, that you can go to all of them, then the council approves that or not. That's why it's important if you are selective in what you want to do. If there's 2 meetings that you want to go to that are off of the major conferences, let's say the fall and spring, and there are 2 committees of the subcommittee, then you as a council member should make that case to the rest of the council, and everybody says, yeah, that's important to us, we should do that. And that's the discussion I think we want to have next week is, what do you want to fund? We have in the past said we'll limit the number of council members that will go to a certain conference out of state, and at times that hasn't held true or hasn't been able to because others said they wanted to go. So, and the council approved it, which is your prerogative, and we will find the funding to do that. But it's a matter of keeping yourself to the budget that you approve and making sure that whatever expenditures that you approve that are done. If there's something in addition that maybe wasn't anticipated, then that's where I think some of these other policies will fall into place.
I fully agree with you. I would like to see this council adopt a policy that states maybe exactly how many trips each council person is allotted. Because I don't like the idea that we only send so many to an NLC, because there could be a hot topic there, something could be going on in the city that would be very pertinent, and if we all went, we could really be engaged and learn a lot and bring it back. To say that we're only going to let X amount go, but if each council person only had so many travel tickets, you would think to cash them in where you would get your best benefit from. And anything outside of that then would be a discussion by this council to be approved. Like I said, I do think that it is very unfair that some cities have to burden so much of a cost of putting members on these steering committees and this and that for NLC and CML when it's not shared throughout the nation or throughout the state. Not that we don't have council that go there, and I know they fully attend everything, they learn a lot, but it still is a policy that needs to be looked at. I think I'm rambling now, so I'll finish.
think Mr. Flannery touched on a couple of the themes that I wanted to hit on in my comments. And I think, first and foremost, this comes down to our duty as a council to fix a budget and hold ourselves to it. So our process tasks departments with looking at the expenditures that they project that they will need to support their function for the coming year, right? And each year they have a list that's longer than we can actually fund. So we ask them to prioritize and come in with as tight a budget as they believe they can model and still move the city in the right direction. So we've seen great progress in that direction over the last several years. Where we've seen a very different trajectory is on our spending as a council. We've set a legislative budget. We've set policy about how many people go to what. And, in rough terms, granted our discretionary spending policy, the reason it's before us tonight is that it hasn't been as black and white as it should have been or could have been. I think the point that we're missing, and Ms. Carson started to touch on this, is that we've got to come up with a dollar amount that we as a council are going to allocate toward legislative budget, period. How we parse that up needs to be done in the same fashion that we ask our departments to do, right? We can't go to everything. Not everybody can go to everything. You can't have your cake and eat it too. We need to be thinking, in my mind, in sort of an ROI mentality, right? Return on investment. As an individual, we only have so much time in this position. We only have so many days in the week, so many days in the weeks in the month. Where do you go? What do you do that's going to have the biggest bang for the community? Can you honestly say that being at every NLC convention is going to have the biggest return on our community? Or are those dollars perhaps better spent by going to a local charity event where you're building relationships on the ground locally? These are decisions that have to be made. We need a policy that constrains us and forces us to make decisions about how best to spend our dollars and our time. So I think, in my mind, next week's discussion is going to be incredibly critical for us to really think critically about how much money we allocate for the things that these policies will cover, and then set policies in the form of the travel policy that we'll talk about next week, and this discretionary fund that really help guide how we spend those dollars, and then hold ourselves to it. Because what we've done to this point is set these things in discussion's sake, and then every time we turn around, we're allocating for another expenditure. And I guess the challenge with that is, yes, the dollars come from somewhere, so somebody can go, but where are they coming from, right? Why not just set a fixed amount for the budget and hold ourselves to it? I mean, if there's really a critical event that's that important, what are you going to sacrifice to do that instead of something else? So I would just say that I think the policy in and of itself makes sense. We can put a lot on paper, but we've got to hold ourselves to it. And I think we demonstrate that in how we approach the budget, the legislative budget next week.
Thank you. Councilman Diaz?
I definitely agree with a lot of the points that you all are bringing up, and I'm looking forward to the travel discussion next week because I think a lot of things will be answered by then. Touching on what Councilman McEldowney said about probably attending more local events would be a great way to really get our bang for our buck. My question is, I noticed that on E, we do need to get city council permission in terms of using our discretionary funds. Is there a minimum dollar amount that's required for that? Or like if you're attending a $30 dinner to support a local charity in the Metro North region, is that something that we can kind of use at our own discretion? So there's no policy on that right now, so now this is the discussion among council members. Okay.
Quick, if I could jump in real quick, on the travel policy under Council Policy 5, it does line out or draw out an actual amount, and that's $350. Anything under $350, city manager approves. Above $350 comes to council for approval. For travel.
Oh, for travel. Okay. So is that something that we need to bring to discussion next week, or is that something that, how do you guys want to proceed with that?
We could certainly put something in there if there's a limit. If it's a Rotary lunch or something like that, if that's what the council prefers, we can call that out.
Because every now and then an event does come through. I remember there was a golf tournament, last weekend or this past weekend and things like that. I just didn't know if that was something that we could just go ahead and do or if it was something that we had to seek permission for. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you.
For discretionary funds, you do have to come back before council on it if you're going to use discretionary funds. Now, on the travel policy that's going to be discussed next week, as Mr. Flannery pointed out, there is the $350 number that the city manager can approve that doesn't have to be specifically handled by the council.
So for discretionary funds, we have to ask permission for it, but if there's a $30 dinner to an event, does that not come out of our discretionary fund, or is that something that is pulled out from our?
If it's a budgeted item, then it would come out of the budget, but
Okay.
my guess is that these are things that pop up that you want to go to. But that is up to you as a council. If you want to say, anything under 50 is fine, or, is there a limit that you want to bring back to council? I think that's up to you.
That's the question. The only downside of not having some oversight, even on $50 or $30, is that then you're leaving it solely to the staff or the city council member to make the decision, and that's sometimes awkward because you can spend $50 quite a few times and in effect circumvent the whole idea of the discretionary fund policy. So it's not that hard to bring it up, at the city council, and then we still have to decide who you're going to have to give the approval when you don't bring it to the city council, like in paragraph, what's our number, E.
I think that's where some of this has been kind of, bless you, Roger, where some of this has been kind of convoluted, is that we've not been clear or sure if which ones kind of go over, if you will, between travel and this policy. So I think that these discussions are definitely warranted and that we need to make these policies a lot clearer. Councilwoman Teeter, you're next.
Okay, I agree with you, Mr. Marino, on letter G, that no attending any partisan political events should be paid by the discretionary funds. I also agree with you, Ms. Carson, that we should limit out-of-state trips to 2. And if you're on a steering committee, you've elected to be on that. And I think that we're spending way too much money on these out-of-state trips. There's some council members that go to 3, 4, 5, 6 events out of state. And we're talking about $20 a month retirement. Look at this spending. I mean, it's gone way overboard. And this year, I still have $1,500 in mine, and if I don't spend it, I don't feel like donating it or anything. It's tax dollars, and I would rather just give it back to the city.
Okay,
I have something else. And then when travel does take place, Mr. Flannery, didn't we talk about when you bring back your travel expense, that it's going to be audited a lot more closely than it had been in the past?
I believe that the policy will include a check and balance when it does come back, that there's a time frame, for mileage submittals. There's a time frame for submittals of receipts, and it'll be reviewed, yes.
Okay, are you finished? Okay, Councilman Bullock.
Okay, now I know there are people on this council that go to a lot of events in the city. Access Housing is having an event coming up this Thursday. We just got invitation for the family violence thing that's coming up, and these clearly come under B, where we don't even have to ask if we want to use our discretionary fund for it. But as many, let's say we say overachievers we have on this council, we have underachievers too that don't go to anything.
Agreed.
They don't show up at anything, and they're the first to be ones that are saying, let's do this with the budget. Well, I'm saying that you serve this council and you serve this city by serving. And if I am on a steering committee and I have 2 steering committee events and I go to NLC and to CML, if it's offset by somebody that hasn't gone anywhere, you know, everybody says, well, that's saving money for the city. But what I'm saying is maybe they aren't saving money for the city. Maybe they aren't doing anything for the city. And if we're going to look at this as a budget as what an overachiever does, let's look at it as a budget on what the underachievers do too, because basically they aren't serving our city. Now, I can tell you, I'm an overachiever. I'm the only diamond that's ever been in this city on NLC. And I got to be a diamond because I went to classes and personal development that I brought back here. I can tell you from the conference I went to in Savannah, and I brought back my report on China, more people understood what our relationship with China was than every time the mayor went to China and brought back his report. I had people finally come up to me and say, well, I understand why we need to do a relationship with China now, because they're this emerging power that is doing economic development all over the world, and if they can benefit our city, why wouldn't we? But they said, we didn't know before why the mayor kept going to China and coming back, and it wasn't doing anything for the city. They understand now. If I'm going to be penalized as being on a steering committee, then I'll get off the steering committee. You know, I basically am retired from my job, and I don't have to worry about going back and forth to work as much as most people. I do work, but I only work part-time. But the people that do work full-time and don't do anything, I don't think they should be so critical. I think they should be the last to speak on the travel policy. They should be the first to speak on the budget, the legislative budget. But don't speak as a critical of the people that do something and bring it back to the city as personal development or city development.
Councilman McEldowney?
Wow. Threw me on a whole new tangent to talk about, but I'll get back to that. Mr. Diaz sparked my memory on a key point, and I think that is, again, travel policy is next week, so we'll talk about travel policy next week. In general, the travel policy and the discretionary expenditures, in my mind, we need to be careful to craft a policy that balances undue overhead for the amounts in question. So if, as we started to talk about a few minutes ago, every $30 expenditure to go to a charity dinner needs to go through a council vote, we're going to start to consume ourselves on Monday nights with an unnecessary level of overhead. I think we need to think about crafting a policy that is explicit enough that it provides the appropriate guidance so that we know what things can be purchased or transacted through our discretionary funds, what things need to be transacted through our travel policy dollars. And it's this simple. You have essentially an open checkbook register that is published at a regular basis that shows how we're spending our dollars, right? That's public information. Let's put it out there proactively. It's published, let's say, monthly. We do it in a manner that is not overly burdensome for staff. We craft a policy that makes it such that staff doesn't have to invest a ton of time into thinking about is this a valid expenditure or not. So, A, we take away a huge amount of overhead for staff. We take away the potential additional agenda item for council to have to sweat approving $30 and $50 golf tournament and dinner invites. So I guess with that said, we can factor that into our travel policy discussion next week. Some of those comments were in my original proposal on travel approval requests and reporting. I think relative to the comments that Mr. Bullock started to go into, again, I traveled extensively in my first 2 years on council and found, by and large, much of the travel gave me the exact same thing that I got out of the prior trip. And so I felt it better to spend my time elsewhere. I also think that it's fact that people's commitment levels, outside commitments and council commitments ebb and flow. And I think it's a very valid point that we have to factor into our overall budget that we set. And so we have certainly had times in the past where we have seen council members allocate a portion of their dollars to another council member when council agreed that it was a worthy investment. I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that some people will have more to do than others. And I think, again, when we get to the travel budget next week, let's think about, in the spirit of the overall legislative budget, what is an amount we allocate toward an overall council pool for those kinds of things. Again, not fund it so that everybody can do everything, but fund it reasonably well enough that there is an amount there that's protected, that's planned for, that can be used for those kinds of endeavors. But again, I think there's a limit on how much of that should be happening. So again, not looking for an extremist revision in how we operate, but more transparency, audits and controls, and clarity so that we're not adding a ton of unnecessary overhead to our processes.
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's spirited discussion on this matter, and I think that that's kind of where we're at. City Attorney, at this point, go ahead.
Just to pick up on what has been said regarding the minimum amount or maximum amount that a council member can expend without coming back for approval. I think those points are well taken, I mean, from personal experience, because it has involved time on my part and on the council member's part to come and ask me about whether this is authorized or that is authorized. So therefore, whatever we end up with should be explicit so that we can eliminate some of that. And also, I personally like the idea of having an amount inserted in here that if you're going to spend $50 as an example for an event that you want to use out of your discretionary funds and you feel that it meets the criteria here, you can go ahead and spend it. But remember, you do have the accounting, the report part that still acts as somewhat of a safeguard, so you as a council aren't giving blank checks out here. So I think the idea of inserting a dollar amount there, as has been suggested, is probably worthwhile, because as you think about it, you as a council, you don't want to have to deal at your council meeting with continuous requests for $30 here, $50 there to attend a function. I wouldn't think you would anyway. And if the guidelines are clearly written, you as a council member, you certainly have the credibility to follow the guidelines and then file your report. So that's my thought on that.
Okay, one last comment, Councilman Bullock.
Bob, just touching on what you just said, on Thursday we have the Access Housing 4th Annual Family Future Gala Award. It's an event that we know that it's a ticketed event that we will be receiving money out of our discretionary fund to use to go to this. Even though we have people on Access Housing that are on their board of directors, we're going to pay ourselves to go to this event. The reporting part of it, is that just saying, I went to the Access Housing? What do you consider reporting on an event like that? Because I want this to be clear, so, because under B, it says we could do this.
Right.
Now you're saying the reporting part, I want to make sure that all of these little items are touched on, so there isn't any doubt in anybody's mind if we go and we come back and you just say that I went and somebody says, well, we don't know what you did there. Well, I ate dinner and watched an award show.
If I may, what I'm envisioning is that we come up with a form for you, and it simply says the amount you spent or that you need to be reimbursed for, and what it was for, and the date, and simplified form. I'm not talking about some extensive time-consuming report here. I'm talking about just simply a report so that finance has a record, what you did, and then they can account for your $1,500 much more readily, and it needs to be filed within 30 days, is the way this is written.
And also to piggyback onto what Councilman Bullock said, I'm not entirely clear, and I don't know how the rest of you are, about which events are in the already a pre-approved budget for the year and which ones we have to use discretionary for. So I think we really need to sit down and take a look. Like, I wouldn't have automatically known access housing was something we needed to pull out of discretionary. So I think we really need to get a more clear picture of which ones we're going to say are not coming out of discretionary and which ones need to come out of discretionary. I don't know how the rest of council feels, but I really feel we need to clarify that. Councilman McEldowney?
I'm just going to echo my earlier comments. We as a council in our legislative budget have to define a total dollar amount we want to allocate toward our legislative budget. We can dicker around all day long about whether or not things come out of a discretionary line item or a pool, but we have to define a line item somewhere in that budget for where these things are going to come from. So many of the events that we're talking about, like Access Housing, are not surprise events. It's not the first time it's being held. There are things that are held every year, same time of year, and for those we can effectively build a plan that says, these are the events, this is an average about what it costs to go, how much do we want to allocate for 3 members, 5 members, 9 members? I think we need to get to that level of detail and or say those sorts of events are going to come out of an individual's discretionary fund, and then question, is our discretionary allocation set at the right threshold? Right? I mean, to me, it's as simple as what Mr. Tinklenberg and his staff do, which is by no means simple, but they take real things and they assign real value to them, and they create real projections based on what's necessary, what they project will be necessary to cover the cost of those things. So I think our duty in partnership with staff is to figure out, on average, what are we spending for these things? Let's set a bar, and that becomes the amount that we're going to allow ourselves to spend. Do you want to put that in a discretionary fund and assign certain criteria that says you can go to these things if it meets this criteria, or some other means? But I guess at the end of the day, it's where's the money going to come from, and how much do we want to allow ourselves to spend on those things?
One thing I think it's interesting, I think this is probably the 3rd year that we've had the discretionary funds, period. Before that, they didn't exist. And one of the reasons the discretionary funds came about was we used to have all the events that everybody wanted to go to from A through Z that the council wanted to go to in the budget. And that's the way it should be. These are the what happens if we want to go type fund that we didn't anticipate. That's what they're supposed to cover. But where it came from was we would go to numerous lunches, ACED, North Metro, dinners, or whatever, and we would pay for a table, and half the table was not there.
Right.
And so other council members got really upset with the fact that we were spending for tickets for others to attend an event, and they didn't show and didn't RSVP to the staff so that we could send somebody in that place. And so the council said, we want to, in effect, have an ability to penalize you for that. So we want to create a fund, $1,000, that's what it was the first year. We want to create a $1,000 discretionary fund so that if you want to go to something that you pay for it. And if you don't go and the table is empty and the city paid for it, then we're going to deduct that from your pool. And that was the thought. What's happened is it's kind of morphed into this discussion tonight, and I think it's just a matter of self-discipline and policing yourself to say, here's what we want, here's the budget, let's stick to this budget. We don't know what every year there's going to be something. Maybe we won't spend $1,500, but just because we have it, we don't have to spend it. But if there's something that pops up, a luncheon that we didn't anticipate, it's there for you to go to. I think it's morphed into a lot of stuff and has gotten to a complicated level that I don't think it was ever intended to be.
Councilman Bullock.
Jerry hit the nail on the head because I was going to say the same thing, that this started out as people not showing up that RSVP'd. And we would be very embarrassed that we'd have a table of 8 with 2 people there, and this is how this started. And I mean, I'm so glad you said it instead of me, because it was like I was saying before, we would have council people RSVP where we would have 8 that are supposed to show up and 2 would show up, and the others would not even apologize for not showing up. And we started this fund, so
This started outside of your tenure on this council.
the funds, no, this fund started before I got off council, because it happened before I ever got off council. You started the fund after I got off council. But I can tell you, there was many a time we had an event that only me and Kathy would be there. Right. And how many people would RSVP? 8. Yes. And so the fund was set up off my tenure on council, but it started before, the conversation started way before I got off council.
Councilman McEldowney.
I think Mr. Bullock's comments then reinforce the point that Mr. Flannery reminds us of. We have a history as a council, regardless of the composition of that council, of committing to things and not necessarily delivering. And part of the challenge with the kinds of events that are exemplified in the examples that Mr. Bullock brings forward is that, again, there's no personal accountability. There's no personal penalty. I can RSVP to everything I want, and if I don't show, then I don't pay a penalty per se. And that, again, was the very thrust of why we talked about instituting this discretionary policy was, as Mr. Flannery points out, you're going to erode your ability to go to other things. So don't sign up for every golf tournament. Don't sign up for every dinner. I think we're in violent agreement on that point, it sounds like. So how do we reconcile what we know to be a historical challenge, mesh it with this discretionary expenditure policy, and effectively each individual has a certain amount they can spend. If you hit the end of your budget, then you got to talk to council about where you go from there, right? I mean, it's that simple to me. I think the policy Mr. Gaylor raises, or the report reference Mr. Gaylor raised was, it's like when you write a check, you write it down in your checkbook. Hey, I spent $50 on groceries. I spent $25 on gas. Same should be different. It should be no different for us. You've gone to an event. You've used some of your funds. Again, I guess the challenge is what gets covered in an open bucket and what gets covered through the discretionary fund. And I guess for that, I'd like staff to bring back a suggestion.
I think one way you want to look at it is if it's your own reserve. It's your own Tabor reserve, if you will. If it's your own contingency, so that you use whatever if you have an item that you want in the budget, then it's in the budget that we're all going, that you're going to an NLC conference or whatever, and the council says, yes, that needs to happen, so they go through that discussion and approve it. And I think you're doing that through the course of the year, and you're just falling within your budget, but something comes up where it's not anticipated, and it's a contingency that allows you to come to council and say, I'd like to use this because it wasn't anticipated, and therefore everybody okay with it. And I think that's really what it ends up being. It's its own kind of reserve fund for you.
Councilwoman Carson.
Because of my lack of memory, I do believe when I first was elected to this council, this discretionary fund was at $1,000, and now it's at $1,500. My memory does not tell me why we increased it by $500 per council person. I think we should probably take it back to $1,000.
Well, okay, we're at a point now where we've discussed it. So,
if council wants, I can review the issues that I need to have answered.
That'd be great.
To finalize this resolution. I
Does that
mean,
sound
there's
good,
some
everyone?
that sound like you're in agreement on, but some,
we're not.
one or two suggested one thing, and there was not really an agreement on that. So if you
Right.
like, I'll review my notes on that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, the first one that I've got a question on is this attendance, and it refers actually to subparagraph 3 under B, attendance at a committee where that is not covered by the legislative budget, and the committee member then, like an NLC committee or a CML committee, do you pay that out of discretionary funds, or is that to be paid out of legislative budget?
I think that's going to be something we're going to have to discuss next week, from what I've understood, to go with the travel policy. Does everyone agree with that? Okay.
Okay, but I'll leave that out for now. All right, next one was the one raised by Councilman Diaz, dealing with if you're going to expend discretionary funds, do you want to have a dollar amount where you just have the good faith approval, as opposed to coming back to council for approval if it's a minimum amount?
Not knowing right now what is exactly on our legislative budget as events that we have programmed, could we find that out and bring that back also next week? Because
I can leave that blank.
it's just like Mayor Pro Tem Snyder said, I don't remember every invitation that we have from year to year that's on our legislative budget. I know that we have the Taste of the Chamber, and I know we have that Chamber Gala, North Metro Chamber Gala, that are automatic. But there are other events that this Access Housing might be on it. When I gave my RSVP, I just told Ms. Rogers to take it out of my discretionary funds. I don't know what's on the legislative budget that is rolling over that we're paying for. So can we get a list of that before we even make a decision on this? And it will help us really pin down what our budget's going to be going forth too. You know, because then we can see some of the items that we've already budgeted into our legislative budget. So I don't want to keep telling you we don't know, but I really would like to see that before I make a decision.
I'll leave that blank.
Okay.
Next one, I heard mentioned that you wanted or considered some type of penalty if a council member responds for attendance at an event and then you don't go. You want to be charged for that event then out of your discretionary funds in any event, even though it's a legislative budgeted item? You want a clause like that in here, which is not in here now, but I can certainly write one.
I would definitely, because it's just like Mr. McAdowney said. There's no accountability. You can RSVP to everything and never show up to anything, and you have no there's no recourse for it. So I would really like to see that if you're going to RSVP for something, show up unless it's an emergency. You can bring back to council and say, this is why I didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And the council can say, okay, we understand that this supersedes the event.
Is that consensus?
Councilwoman Carson?
Well, I just had a concern about that. Just as very recent, we seen Mr. McEldowney, because of his job, immediately be swooshed out of town and no return date stamped on him, correct? And I think some of us sitting up here know that we live under that, and so it's with good intentions that you sign up for something or you commit to a travel date. But when Mr. Employer says there's something different than that, and so I do hesitate there a little bit.
Well, I can write.
But wouldn't that be one of the things that you would bring back to council and say, I was fully intending on,
Well, and the only reason I caution you is because at one point this year, certain council members were feeling that this council was a little more lenient with some. And so anytime that you have something like that, if you're going to tell me once you bring that up, it's automatically approved, but if it's for this council to approve, I certainly don't want council ever feeling that...
favoritism.
Yes.
Okay, how would you suggest that we go about this? I mean, what would your suggestion be to put in there?
Well, I think we're all adults, and I
aren't.
think sometimes peer pressure speaks louder than any written rule does. And so we as council, if we police ourselves and kindly say to a fellow council person, seen your name there, but you weren't there, but a little more self-policing. So I don't know, Mr. Bullock.
Yeah,
I can go along with that.
I guess the other thing that's come crossing my mind is that, let's just say you say you were going to go to something and you don't, and you're going to have it deducted from your $1,500. That's not your personal checkbook. That's the city's checkbook. That's the people's checkbook.
Exactly.
So you're getting a deduction, but it's not really your checkbook. It's the citizen's checkbook. So I don't like the idea that it's a penalty out of the citizen's checkbook. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think we need to find a way that it's not our money. And it, honestly, does it really hurt you as an individual if you're dinged for $50? No, it doesn't. It hurts the taxpayers because that's their money. So I can see what you're saying. You know, I mean, there's going to be times when we say we're going to go to something and we can't because there's an emergency or something happens. But I just think we have to be really, really careful to make sure that we do to the best of our ability attend that event if we say we're going to, unless there's an emergency, and be accountable to that.
Just to be clear, it's not a
Does that make
double.
sense?
It's not a double pay for an event. Just I want to make sure we're clear on that. The table would be purchased because you don't go. It's not paid for again with your discretionary. It's taken from your discretionary to replenish the general fund that it came from.
It's an accounting. It's an accounting entry.
So there isn't a double payment by taxpayers. The taxpayers paid the first time you went or didn't go to that event. So
Right,
so
but I
it's-
think you
it's-
understand what I was trying to say about that,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes,
Okay.
understand.
Okay. Councilman McEldowney.
I think you've actually hit on the very heart of it, right? Today, it's the taxpayers' dollars.
Yes.
It's always the taxpayers' dollars. Today, there's no transparency that helps to catch, if you will, or highlight where we are or are not coming through with the best interest of our taxpayer on these things. And yes, it's nickel and dime amounts compared to many of the other decisions that we make. But the point is, if we've budgeted an amount, we say we're going to go, we don't go, no one's the wiser. This gives us a vehicle to say, you know, I did or I didn't go, or, I mean, again, we're talking around this a million ways from Sunday. I would actually suggest that I would move, rather, that we cease this discussion at this
Agreed.
point and allow staff to reflect on the takeaways from this discussion. And if council is on board, that we, again, combine this into the legislative budget / travel policy budget so we can talk about it comprehensively next week.
I would agree with that. How does the rest of the council feel? Everybody okay with that? Yes? Dominic? Jim? Yes. JD? Kathy? Paulo? Okay, great. Renee?
I wanted to beat the horse some more, but that's why you didn't ask me. Okay.
Okay, that being said, we'll move on to administrative council business. Is there anyone that has administrative council business?
I do.
Councilwoman Teeter.
Yes, I just have one thing. When I brought up the amplified music last week, and not just in backyards, little parties or things like that, but, you know, pretty well-attended functions like that. Mr. McBroom, could you tell me which entities, which departments, the process that an applicant would go through to get that special license for that?
Certainly, Mrs. Teeter. Assuming the event qualifies as an organized event under the Land Development Code, those applications are made through the Community Development Department.
So they don't go through the police department or the fire department or any other departments at all, just the one that you're saying?
Applications are submitted to the Community Development Department and then sent out for review to those other departments, including the fire department and the police department.
You shared with me those other departments then? The fire department?
It is the fire department, Public Works Department, our planning division reviews them.
Police.
The police department. If food is involved, the Tri-County Health Department. I'd be happy to provide you
Okay,
a
if
copy
you
of
would.
the application.
Why don't you
that
do
would
that, and
include
then it won't take up so much time. Thank you, sir.
Certainly.
Councilman Bullock.
Yes, I had a citizen come to me because he received a notice of violation on his property, and his property is 5155 East 64th Avenue, which is the event center, Mile High Event Center. In a lot of the pictures that were taken, they're the dog track. I think there was a miscommunication with the officer that went out, and they thought that this same entity was the owner of the dog track also, because there's some pictures of the fence along the dog track with the dead trees and shrub, and so if you go over there and look at the 5155 East 64th Avenue, and his property doesn't have these violations on it. So I'm just hoping that we can clear that up. Have you heard this, Ms. Flanagan?
I have heard some of this from the property north of the track.
Right.
And so I did refer it to Mr. McBroom, and I believe he's talking to the owner's rep. Also, just signed off a contract on behalf of the Urban Renewal Authority today to trim the trees around the perimeter of the track to beautify it and also make it a little bit more safety for visibility.
Okay, because I brought up about 6 months ago that the tree that is in front of the yellow flashing light, you can't see that yellow flashing light coming from east to west. So a lot of people, if you want to talk about a speed trap, that was a speed trap because you didn't see it until you went through it too fast, and then you realized that you got a ticket. So it's our bad, so we will take care of it and apologize to the owner for him receiving that notice.
Mr. Bullock, I'll reserve the apology because there may be a violation that I need to check on, but I think you're right on.
Okay.
Mr. Benson.
Yes, thank you. Back on, I think it was August the 8th, I thought we had a consensus of the council that we were going to develop some sort of an annexation policy, since we don't have any written policy on annexation. Has anything been done about that?
Yes, I believe staff is still working on that and preparing it. The specific ideas that we're looking at are all of the annexations that we're possibly going to be looking at in the next few months.
Okay,
so
good.
I believe Mr. McBroom and his staff are trying to get that scheduled now.
Okay. And also, one other thing that I guess goes into our discussion about discretionary funds, travel funds, or whatever, there's a high-speed rail conference in November. This is something that I'm aware of through DRCOG. DRCOG is sending 3 people. 6 people applied for it, but their name's in the hat. My name was not drawn. If I'm elected, I want to go to this conference, and I want to either have it come out of my discretionary funds or I guess the legislative budget. It really doesn't make any difference at this point in the year, but is that okay with the council? Like I said, if I'm not reelected, I'm not going to this because it's after the election.
make?
Yes, Councilman McEldowney.
Could we use this as an example of a test drive of the new travel policy? I mean, hold this until next week, take the policy that gets established and use this as an example of a travel request, if you will? Would that make sense? With the contingency on the reelection?
Well, may I respond to that?
Yes, of course.
Next week, as I understand it, Mr. Flannery's going to present a budget item that's going to cover the things that the city will pay for out of the budget, not out of discretionary funds. So if it's going to be paid for out of discretionary, out of the budget item, the legislative funds, correct me if I'm wrong here, that's one thing. But if I understand Mr. Benson, he's willing, that comes out of discretionary funds. So one way or the other, it would seem to me that it would certainly qualify under discretionary funds if it doesn't qualify under the budget for legislative funds.
And that makes sense. And obviously, I guess my point is, we're raising a travel request tonight when we're in the middle of talking about how we're going to tighten up our travel policy. And I'm just suggesting that, because it's also contingent on an election result, that would it make sense to hold this until we've kind of rooted through the travel policy discussion? And we are all on record as hearing that you want to go. Does that make sense?
It makes sense up to a point, because if Mr. Benson was going to buy his ticket, the earlier he buys his ticket, it could be cheaper. And if he's using his discretionary funds, say he was to buy it on Southwest, he can always give the ticket back to the city if he wasn't elected. And it would be cheaper this week than it would be next week. The longer we wait, the more we put him, it's a financial burden. I would say if we say yes now, contingent on him discretionary funds and the airline he uses, so he doesn't have to pay a change fee, we would say it now instead of waiting to next week, and then we say yes next week, and the ticket's $50 or $60 more.
No, but Mr. Bill, what I'm going to do is buy a Southwest Airlines ticket on my own. And if I'm not reelected, if I don't go to this conference, then I'll just use it on a future flight, because there is no change fee on Southwest. You get 100 cents on the dollar if you change. But I'll just make that reservation and pay for the ticket on my own right now, and then get reimbursed later on if I do go to the conference.
And that's why I'm saying, why can't we say yes or no to discretionary funds now? We're going to talk about travel policy next week. I mean, I can understand if he wanted to use a legislative budget, but that is what we're saying we aren't going to use for this kind of incident, that if something comes up late in the year and you want to use it and you come to council and ask for discretionary funds, this would be the time to do it.
Yeah, my only comment, just to be clear, was that we just suspended discussion on a discretionary budget policy to carry it over to next week. So why are we, look, I'm not.
But he has, but we have the policy.
I am withdrawing any concern, because I don't want to watch us chase our tails on this. So however he wants to spend it, that's fine. I appear to be the only person confused as to why we're raising a request in the midst of a policy discussion.
Councilman Moreno.
Because I wanted to raise the request in a timely manner. It's going to be in a little over a month, and I'm thinking 5 or 6 weeks is
in case it
proper
wasn't
matter
heard.
notice.
I've withdrawn any concern. So
all right, good.
Is that trip this year or next year, Mr. Benson?
This year.
When is the trip, sir?
It'll start, it's a 2-day thing starting November the 2nd, be the day after the election, but
yeah,
I'm willing to make the plans, and if I'm reelected, I will
So
go.
next week, we're talking about 2012 budget in any event, so.
Right. Councilman Moreno, did you have something to add?
Move to allow Mr. Benson to use discretionary funds to attend the conference contingent upon a successful reelection.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to allow Councilman Benson to use his would-be discretionary funds to go to this trip pending his reelection. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Benson.
And again, this is a high-speed rail conference. in my position on the State Transportation Advisory Committee, we discuss high-speed rail about every other month. It's something that I'm very interested in. They're talking about using it up in the mountains, although I don't understand how you're going to have high-speed rail going over the Continental Divide or going under it or whatever. But I want to find out how they propose to do it in
Councilwoman
Colorado.
Carson?
Mr. Benson, you're lucky that passed because I would have said no. If they have decided that only so many people are going to go, then I would assume the policy is those that go can come back and train those of us that stayed and update us, and not everybody needs to attend this. So I don't know why that's not okay of saying not everybody needs to attend. And I guess that, not to use you as an example because I feel really bad, but maybe that's the way council should start thinking about some things. It's something we do at work, training the trainer, and then the trainer goes off and then relates and brings all this back. It is very fun to be part of something and to really be there and to learn it firsthand. But is it totally necessary? I don't believe it always is. And evidently this board didn't feel it was because it's only sending so many. Either that or it's tightened its budget too, and it has to rethink how people travel and how we get information back to us. I appreciate all the time that you spend on these committees. I know you're extremely committed to them. But I like I said, you're lucky that the rest of them said yes, because I would have said no.
Okay, that being said, we're going to move on to reports. City Attorney?
I have nothing further this evening.
Thank you. City Manager Flannery?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Pro Tem, members of council. Very quickly, you all received a update report from Mr. Cordero today, late, I guess, right before the council meeting, regarding the community initiative for next year, looking at ballot measures. So take a look at that. If you have any questions, feel free to give Ms. Ryan or myself a call or an email. And then secondly, I wanted to let you know that through the Metro Denver Chamber, there is a site selector conference going on this week, and our own Ms. Morris is hosting a site selector, and Commerce City is one of the sites that is being looked at. So lots of positive things continue to gain momentum, and just want to let you know that that's going on this week. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Moreno?
Just one item. Want to invite everyone to the Central Neighborhood Block Party this Friday, September 30th, from 5 to 7 p.m., and it'll be on DeMott Avenue, the house where the block where my parents live. We're actually going to shut down a portion of the block and have tables in the street, and it's going to be good fun. Come meet your neighbors and have a good time. Thanks.
Councilman Benson?
Thank you. Well, last Wednesday was DRCOG, and we discussed the SCRPG resolution that we voted on last week, and we're going to make that application for those funds through HUD. That will happen. I think it'll be successful this time. Also, Comcast made a presentation where they're going to provide to any student who's eligible for the free lunch program high-speed internet at the rate of $9.95 a month, plus they'll arrange for a computer for $149. Is anybody else aware of this?
Yes, Mr. Benson, I brought that up quite some time ago. That was the project that I was trying to work with our House representative on, and was given a rough time about, because I was trying to bring that. I had gotten that information at WMIG. When I went to WMIG, Comcast was there, and I met with the representative from Comcast about that. So yes, I know all about that program, and it's a great
So we
program.
owe this all to you? Is that
No.
Oh, we don't?
I'm saying I had the information, and I met with the woman. I'm not in charge of Comcast by any way, shape, or form, but I'm saying that I had this information quite some time ago, and was trying to work with somebody on it, and it didn't work out. But I have the information, and I still think the school district should take it and move forward with it.
Right, I've got a flyer. I think what I'll do is, unless the council has an objection, send it to people that I know on the school boards of 14 and 27J to say, here's a flyer outlining how you can be eligible for this program.
I think just a majority of students in School District 14 could certainly use that program. I think that program's a great program.
And also, there was a discussion about, you've heard me use the word, and other people use the term VMT, vehicle miles traveled, which is an alternative to the gasoline tax as far as financing transportation, financing roads, bridges, whatever. In Colorado, I guess the word is, it's MBUF, or mileage-based user fees. And I guess we're making some progress, according to the people that went to a conference in Breckenridge about a month ago. And of course, I was just at a conference where we discussed the VMT for commercial vehicles. And it's just something that's coming. Get ready for it. It's going to be an alternative to the gasoline tax, and maybe we'll be able to finance our transportation problems in this state sooner than later, before everything collapses on us. The next day, Thursday, September 22nd, the E470 meeting, I was very pleased to have Mr. McBroom and Mr. Gaylor there to make a presentation about the origins of the contract that we have with E470, and I think it was a very excellent presentation. I think the people at the board were very happy to hear those sorts of things. It's like we made a deal 17 years ago with E470. We agreed to loan them about, $4.5 million to help them build the road. I think it was essential to getting the road off the ground back in 1995, 1994. We made the loan in a timely basis, and it was repaid by E470. Now this January 1st, 2012 date is about to roll around, and they will become liable for building the off-ramp from southbound Tower onto westbound Pena Boulevard. There's just discussion about, is this really an enforceable thing? Can E470 agree to build something that's not on E470? And, there are a lot of equitable considerations here. It's like, what if we hadn't provided that $4.5 million? This was part of the deal that we made with them. And I think that the attorney for E470 recognizes the equitable and the legal obligations. And I know what we're asking for is that $1 million and a half be appropriated for next year to do the engineering and design, and then maybe split the construction cost of about another $10 million between 2013 and 2014, so that by the end of 2014, we've got the thing built. And that's what I'm pushing for, and I'm hoping that that's going to be approved in the next couple of weeks by the E470 board. Because I think all the equities are in our favor. We've done everything that we were required to do under this contract, and now it's just up to E470 to complete the performance of their obligations under that contract. So let's hope for the best. The next night, September 23rd, Friday, the Prairie View High School football game. Prairie View lost to Monarch 34-0. Monarch is number 2 in the state in 4A. They've got some kind of a double wing offense that you will never see anyplace else except Monarch High School, but they have a good team. The next day, and I see a smile on Mr. Akers' face over there, Texas A&M played Oklahoma State and lost by 1 point. Oklahoma State's now number 6 in the nation. They were number 7, I think. We were number 8. Texas A&M was number 8. Now we're number 14, and Oklahoma State is number 6, and that's well deserved. Even though it was a 1-point victory, they won the game. It goes down as a W or an L, so congratulations, Mr. Aker. Maybe we'll see you in a bowl game in the future, since we're moving to the Southeastern Conference next year. So, okay. And I went to Mr. Marino's party yesterday, which was a lot of fun. And that's it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Carson. Thank you, Councilman Bullock.
There was a mistake made by Mr. Benson on the score of that game. It was a 3-point loss. Oklahoma State took a safety in the end to end the game, and they would have beat them by 3 points, but they felt sorry for him at the very end of the game and ran out of the end zone. On Friday, they had the senior volunteer banquet, which was, they set up this whole Chambers as a cruise ship. And you would not have believed how great this looked. When you walk through the doors out there, we had Julie from the Love Boat standing there taking your tickets. And then you came in here and it was set up as the main dining room of a cruise ship. And it absolutely looked, if you didn't know, you wouldn't have known. It was perfect. And Mr. Marino, Ms. Teeter, myself, and Mr. Diaz were there, and we did something that we normally don't do. We all sat at different tables and actually had a good time with everybody we sat with, and they appreciated the fact that the council members spread themselves out. But it was a good time. The next day, it was a Commerce City Historical Society picnic, and they had all the old mayors, not old as in old, they had all the former mayors come and give talks on what they thought was the most relevant issue during that time that they accomplished. And it was Mayor Natal, Mayor Ford, Mayor Hayes, and Mayor Busby. And Sherry Kite Samansky spoke for her dad about what issues that she thought were really the important issues during his time. And it was really history, verbal history of this city. It just took you back. And the only person we were missing was Bob, because Bob could have told him, okay, wait a minute, you didn't do that. That's a mistake. But funny thing about it, trash was a big issue on how trash became, and everybody said this, trash is not free. The city pays for trash, so nobody can ever say we have free trash. We have city-paid trash. And if you look in the paper from last week, Denver is proposing to have their citizens pay for their trash in order to get a budget stopgap. But other than that, and attending, that was what I attended, and those were very fun activities on a beautiful weekend.
Thank you, Councilman McEldowney.
I unfortunately missed the Historical Society event. I have attended that in the past, and it's a phenomenal event. Sounds like it was, once again, a great event. I spent my Saturday, as mentioned at the top of the meeting, walking neighborhoods in Commerce City on behalf of the school district's ballot measure. And again, just phenomenal to see the number of folks turned out at the District Training Center, where they had everyone convene in advance of getting out to walk. Can't say enough about the dedication of the teachers. I know Ms. Carson spoke at length about the dedication of these folks, but to see staff members from literally every school, they had the organization that morning set up by school, essentially. So you saw clusters of folks in their school colors. So no Texas A&M present. This was Pennock and Timig and Second Creek, et cetera, in their outfits. And these folks went and walked the neighborhoods around the schools that they support, talking to parents, and just a really neat event. I spent my morning, really, I guess it was from about 8 until almost 2, walking around the Second Creek and Otho Stewart neighborhoods. And, again, it's one of those things where it's amazing the things that people hear about and the things that people don't hear about. Unfortunately, a lot of folks not hearing about our city paper that they get in the mail, and I don't know how it doesn't show up or hit their radar, but here's an item that contains information from both our school districts, our water district, and our city, and so much information that's just not I'm not sure how it's not cutting through the noise, but a discussion for another day. Other than that, I would just, again, implore folks to get out and help spread the word to folks about that measure and help ensure its passage. Thank you.
Councilman Diaz.
I want to echo what Councilman Bullock said. I thought that senior volunteer recognition dinner, the cruise ship setup was great. I think the only flaw that night was Councilman Moreno wearing his dungarees,
Yeah.
as Mayor Natal would put it. It's actually funny because my wife isn't really impressed by much. You know, I'll tell her my stories about when I work with the Nuggets and things that I hear at schools and things that I hear at council. But the thing that impressed her the most was when I actually showed her the pictures from that night, the pictures of the cruise ship, even as far as the safety vests that they had hanging up. It was just amazing. And she looked at that, and there was a picture of me and Carolyn Keith, the director of Parks and Rec, and she's like, when are you going to take me on a cruise? Mind you, we've gone 3 times, and I think the last time we went was 3 years, but apparently that was her hint of it's time for us to go. But my favorite part of the evening, actually, a story I'd like to share is I sat at a table with one of the music makers, and she performed earlier that night. And I asked her probably about 2 or 3 times to sing for me, and she would not, but I think she got tired of me asking that she finally decided to sing Missouri Waltz or Tennessee Waltz. She couldn't tell me what exactly it was called while the band was playing it. And it was pretty funny just because, you know, she kept saying no, she kept saying no. But apparently what I've learned from council is if you nag enough, eventually people will do what you tell them to do. So it was a great event. Thank you.
Councilwoman Teeter.
Yes, I too attended that volunteer senior recognition dinner, and I can't even go into detail on how wonderful it really was. And secondly, Mr. Bullock, if you could share this with your wife, I was up in Aspen with my daughter Saturday and Sunday is why I didn't attend that Historical Society picnic. If you could do that. And congratulations to Pauline Flowers for winning, I think it was the Red Dress Award or whatever.
Sweater.
Right, and she was my neighbor for 30 years, a very good friend of mine. Thank you.
Lastly, I'll be brief about this, but I did attend the Metro North, Chamber Breakfast on Housing, and that was a pretty good event. There was a panel of speakers and very interesting talking about the trends in the housing market and how the rental market looks and how things look for the future of housing. Also went to the Great Education Colorado Luncheon, which was also excellent, and a lot of good information about the state of education right now, and that was at the Denver Athletic Club. Went to Republic Services. They are going green with their clean fuel in their trucks, and it's just they're really doing a great job over there, and I want to congratulate Republic Services. They're a great business in Commerce City, and it was an honor to be able to cut the ribbon with them. Seniors Volunteer recognition dinner, even though Renee forgot about me. I attended that as well, and it was excellent. This place was, you would not have believed this was not, Carnival Cruises. It was so great. So I too want to congratulate Pauline Flowers on the Red Sweater Award, and that is an award, a special award that Wells Fargo provides to the outstanding volunteer senior, and the dinner was just amazing. So thank you to staff. I mean, couldn't have asked for a better job. I also attended the Historical Society picnic. That was very interesting and a lot of fun to listen to the past mayors talk about different things that went on, and I found it to be very interesting. So, if there be no further business to come before this council, we are